You might be here. You might be here. Or even here. No matter where you're at in the process of starting a coffee shop, chances are there are a lot of hurdles ahead of you. Many people have the dream of opening a coffee shop one day, but few know what it actually takes. In this course, we'll be covering everything from startup costs, build out, equipment selection, all the way to your grand opening day. In case you don't know us, we're Valor Coffee. My name's Ross, and we started this company back in 2016 with the vision of matching the top 1% of coffee in the world with the top 1% of hospitality. We've since opened 2 successful coffee shops and helped a ton of others get their cafes off the ground through our wholesale partner program. We thought about selling this course, but we decided to give it away for free on YouTube. Over the years, we have witnessed this reality firsthand, that coffee shops who equally prioritized coffee quality with hospitality make their communities better and brighter. And we want to do all that we can to help those entrepreneurs achieve their goals through courses like this and through working directly with each other through our wholesale partner program. There are so many critical decisions you make early on in the process that shape your cafe for years to come. And we're going to do all we can in this course to equip you every step of the way. In Module 1, we're actually going to try to convince you to not start a coffee shop. But if you can make it through that, let's lock in and don't look back.
Before you buy that espresso machine or sign your lease, I want you to pause. Ask yourself, why am I really doing this? Because whatever your answer is, the coffee business will test it harder than you think. Okay, welcome to Module 1. This lesson is going to be all about getting real with yourself and making sure opening a coffee business isn't just something that sounds cool, but something that you're actually built for and ready to take on. So we're going to tackle the big question. Why do you want to open a coffee shop? It seems simple. Maybe it's just because you love coffee. Maybe you love your local coffee shop and it makes you feel something special that you want to share. Maybe you've pictured yourself creating a space where people connected over amazing drinks. These are all nice, amazing reasons, but here's what we've learned. Those warm feelings, they disappear, and they disappear fast when reality sets in. When your espresso machine decides to break down during the morning rush, when payroll is due and your account balance makes you sweat, when you're scrubbing the floors at 10 p.m. because you can't get rid of that leak in the back room, it gets harder than you think sometimes. And a lot of people, they think, oh, I just want a coffee shop for passive income. But unless you passively want to make $500 a month, it's not going to be that passive. Your reason, it needs depth. It needs to go beyond the Instagram moments and the cozy vibes. That's why we push every founder to write their why in one clear sentence. The why for us, it's to be the top 1% in coffee and in hospitality. So I want you to take some time, pause this video, and just write down your why in one sentence. Did you pause it yet? Seriously. Okay, here's the tough question. You got that why. Would you still want to be doing this if it meant that you're working 60 hours a week and you made $35,000 in your first year? If that's a no, maybe you should explore other ways to be a part of the coffee world. Maybe partnering with someone, investing, starting with a coffee cart. But if it's a yes, let's keep going. You've got the heart for this. Let's build the plan to match. Most new owners, they think they're just going to work on their business. But the reality check is, in the beginning, you're going to be working in your business, like all the time. So it's time for some truth about what this actually is going to look like. Because opening a coffee shop isn't a side project, it's your life. And every bit of your time, energy, and emotional bandwidth, it gets poured into it, especially within those first 12 to 18 months. And you kind of start being everything. You're going to be the GM. You're going to be the barista, the janitor, the social media manager. And then you hire employees. You're going to be the trainer and the emotional support. The shops that make it early on aren't the ones with perfect latte art. They're the ones where the owner shows up every day, handling what needs to get done. And we've watched so many people walk into this thing thinking, oh, they can work 10 hours a week, delegate everything to everyone else. But unless you've got serious capital and a rock star GM, that's a fast track to failure. All right, here's your homework. I want you to write down exactly how many hours per week you think that you can realistically invest into this thing. And be honest. If it's going to be less than 30 hours a week, think about starting with something smaller, like a mobile cart or a part-time concept, instead of just jumping straight into a full cafe. Because starting small, it's not settling. It's that starting bigger is going to be a recipe for burnout. And remember, in the beginning, you're the manager, you're the operator, and you're on bar a lot. It's kind of like the only thing you're doing in your life. And here's the reality that we've learned. People perceive it as giving back to the community, but people run into a reality check very quickly. It can be super draining. In our next lesson, we're going to talk about paying your ignorance debt and whether or not you need barista experience to open a coffee shop. You don't need to be a coffee expert to start, but if you've never worked in a cafe, you're carrying what we call ignorance debt. Okay, welcome to lesson 2. Today we're going to be talking about knowledge, specifically understanding how cafes actually operate. We get messages all the time from people who've never worked in coffee, but they're ready to open a shop. And here's what we tell them. You need to pay off your ignorance debt. You pay that debt by getting your hands dirty, by getting a job to build your skills. Working in a cafe, it teaches you things that books and videos, they just can't. It's real life experience. You got to learn how to manage busy shifts when the line's out the door and your espresso machine starts acting up. You need to learn how to train new staff who don't know a cortado from a cappuccino to a flat white. You need to know what it's like to deal with equipment breakdowns during a morning rush. You got to learn the art of customer conversation, not just taking orders, but building relationships that bring people back. You understand ordering inventory from the ground up. You got to know exactly how much milk you go through on Tuesday versus Saturday. This is small stuff, but it adds up. So, what if you've never worked in coffee? Get a job at a cafe, even if it's just for the weekends. The most direct path to paying your ignorance debt is working in a coffee shop. Heck, you can volunteer or shadow a manager. Many owners, they'll let serious prospective operators observe their operations. And there's even simpler ways. You can join an online community where you can learn from experienced operators. You can also watch cafe owners from behind the scenes. Don't just visit during Instagram moments, but come during chaos and see how they handle the real problems. If you're coming from another industry, great. Outside perspective always helps, but check your ego, bring humility, ask questions, and learn fast. The people that succeed, they listen instead of assuming that they know better. And not everyone can just go out and get a traditional coffee job. Career obligations, family responsibilities. If that's you, here is your alternative. Learn through comprehensive online courses that go beyond the basics. Join communities where you can connect with other operators and learn from real experiences. Start hosting coffee at your house right now. Practice brewing techniques. Learn to identify good coffee from great coffee and understand what your future guests are going to taste. All right, time for the dirty work. If you haven't yet, try to get a job in coffee, even just for 2 days a week, or volunteer or shadow at a nearby shop. If working in a cafe isn't possible, commit to the alternative path. Invest in serious online education and actively participate in coffee communities. Ignorance debt, it's real, and the coffee industry will collect either way. Pay it up front through deliberate learning, or pay it later through expensive mistakes in your own business. The goal is not becoming a world-class barista before opening. It's understanding how coffee businesses actually work and how you can lead a team from a place of experience. In our next module, we're gonna bust out our calculators and we're gonna find out how much it really costs to start your coffee shop.
Okay, before we go any further, I want to give you guys a heads up that we're going to be sharing questionnaires, spreadsheets, resource documents, and those are all going to be available for free for you through our online community called the Valor Coffee Community. All you got to do is go to the top link in the video description here, and it'll take you to our community to join, where you will get access to all these things that we're going to be referencing throughout this course and be able to join over 1,000 people already on there who are in a similar situation to you, either starting or running a coffee shop, coffee cart, whatever it is. And from here on out, we're going to be flashing a banner across the top of the video here to show like, hey, watch out, this resource is available for you to get in our community. So head over there, go to our resources page, which is on the left once you're on the community, and you'll be able to see all that good stuff right there. All right, module 2, let's keep it going.
All right, welcome to module 2. We're here to help future coffee shop owners realistically plan for startup costs. It's time to evaluate our funding options, and we're going to build a budget that leads to sustainability, not stress. And that's the big question, right? How much does it cost to open a specialty coffee shop? Everyone thinks they know the answer, but most people tend to be way off. All right, in lesson 1, we're going to tackle the number everyone wants first. What does opening a coffee shop actually cost? And we're going to go based on our experience and industry conversations and give you some realistic numbers. So for a small cafe in this year, 2025, we would say that's going to run you about $150,000 to $250,000. If you're looking for a fully built out cafe with professional design, you need to up that to $300,000 to $400,000 at least. And you might be saying, that's a pretty big range. Well, there's some fixed costs that you can't avoid, like your espresso machine, your grinders, your plumbing, electrical, permits, non-negotiable expenses. But then there are choices that dramatically impact your investment. New equipment versus used, fancy imported tile versus concrete, custom millwork versus IKEA. Here's something we learned. We used lots of budget gear early on. Now it did help with some startup costs, but we paid for it later in maintenance and breakdowns. And that's the trade-off. Lower upfront costs often means higher ongoing expenses. So let's zoom out for a second and categorize. Your money is going to be going to these specific areas. Build out and construction. This is your plumbing work, your electrical, your flooring, your paint. And based on the scope of your work and what you want for the space, this is where your budget can really explode. Now, we'll look at equipment. Just your espresso machine alone, it can range from $15,000 for something standard all the way up to $50,000 or $60,000 for something top of the line. And if you want to add grinders, refrigeration, point of sale system, it can add up really fast. And this one's sneaky, permits and licensing. I'm talking health department permits, business licenses, potentially even a liquor license. These things can vary location by location, but they're often unavoidable. And last but not least, working capital. What most people forget, cash for initial inventory, staff training, first month's payroll, unforeseen delays. And trust us, if you're working with the government, there will often be delays. All right, let's break down the difference between a bootstrap or a big build out. And this is a critical decision time. What do I want? What can I afford? A bootstrap cafe or a big build out cafe? Let's be honest, you do not need to start big. You need to start smart with what you can do. And this is a common scenario. Someone has $100,000 available, which is already amazing. But with everything they want, that budget could quickly add up to $300,000, $400,000. So before you fall in love with that perfect space or that perfect machine, ask yourself, can I start as a cart or a pop-up to test my concept, build customers, and maybe even build up some revenue? Can I lease equipment instead of buying everything? This will help me preserve working capital. And can I run lean and learn the business before expanding? From our journey, we started small and staffed it ourselves. We were in the business, and that let us make mistakes, while being able to survive them. Build too big, too fast, with no margin for error, and you're gambling your entire future on perfect execution from day one. And that's not a business plan, that's a prayer. Starting humble is not settling. Some of the most successful coffee businesses we know, they began with a single cart or a tiny space that barely fit 2 customers, and it grew from there. In our first location, we wanted to start as lean as possible, establish our culture, working capital, then make improvements. Both approaches can work, but they require very different financial positions and risk tolerance. So here is the key takeaway. Be brutally honest about what you can afford, what is available for you. Sometimes you're gonna have to drop some of the cute, trendy moments or things that you want for your space. That can't be your starting point. So here's some homework. Create a realistic budget based on your actual financial situation, not your dream scenario. And we'll provide worksheets to break down these costs accurately. And next time, we're gonna dive deeper into the specific equipment decisions that make or break your budget. All right, lesson 2, module 2. This is gonna be a little show and tell. This is the real deal, just raw look at our Buildout spreadsheets for Alpharetta back in 2019 when we built out our cafe. And then we're gonna jump over to our Dunwoody Buildout spreadsheets from 2022 to show you how much all of that costs. And I'm gonna show you just how much different it is, based on the size of your space, the year you're in, just because, based on supply chain things, your build out could just be more expensive because, wood is through the roof pricing wise. It always feels like there's something like that. So right now I'm in the build out expense. So this is all of the construction costs associated with our space. And this is like, no offense to our general contractor, but this guy, he was mostly doing like outdoor decks. So we got kind of the most cost effective general contractor that you can imagine. And looking at this, we see, whoa, $5,000 right out of the gate before you're even going just to get an architect to draw up your plans, get them engineered, and submit them for permitting to your local government. And so if you're not expecting something like that, that can really shock your budget. And then just looking down here, this is all, honestly, in hindsight, extremely modest. We'll get into the more specs on like what kind of space you're looking for, but Alpharetta, they went off of walls, so the plumbing work, the electrical, the framing, it was all going through walls versus Dunwoody, where we're having to go under concrete. And that's just gonna bring a lot higher cost to everything. A lot of the HVAC work was already done, so we just kind of added like 1 tube of lining for the rest of the space. And so, totaling all that being $58,000, you really don't get much cheaper than that, honestly. I've only heard a couple stories of people getting less than that for a build out in their space. So, and we're already at $60,000. So if we look over here at equipment list, this is, it just adds up, honestly. That's kind of one of the big things we want to show you is, you think, oh, I just need an espresso machine. Oh, I just need a grinder. But this is our top line, espresso machine maintenance. We actually picked up an espresso machine on Craigslist for $9,000. And this is just how much it costs to get it running again and get it working well. And so us coming in with, sub $14,000 for our biggest asset was such a help. But you got things like, light fixtures, $3,500. You got stuff, tables, chairs, stools, $3,500. Ceramics, $2,500. These things that maybe isolated don't seem super expensive, but when you add that up with all of your different refrigerators, your ice maker, your point of sale equipment, your dishwasher, it can really start to add up. And so this $40,000 or $39,000 mark, that's not even including the original $9,000 that went to our espresso machine. And so we were able to kind of build out all of our funding. So we got, a private loan here, I emptied my college fund for here. We ran a pay what you want campaign out of our cart here. And we still came up under, but thankfully because we were operating our coffee cart, we had enough money to kind of sustain the rest of the build out. And so what looks like it costing around $90,000. That's just kind of how much we raised, because we got 40 here, and then we have about 60 here, and then another 10 for the espresso machine. So we're kind of running around $120,000 for our Alpharetta build out in 2019. And that's in a space where we were working with about 700 square feet of cafe to work on. So when it comes to all this, like this construction work, it's just a little bit lower because the space is so small. So with that being said, let's just jump over to the Dunwoody build out, and we'll see just how different it can be 3 years later and with a space that's about 3 times the size. So we're going to jump to the construction side. And here you can just see, might just jump down there and see that number. That's about, 4 times nearly the difference. And if we go from the top, our architect for the Alpharetta Cafe was only $5,000, but, cut to 3 years later, things change, and now you're charging $10,000 for drawings for a cafe. We talk about it when it comes to working capital too, but the security deposit and first month rent, that can come out of nowhere if you have a pretty big space and you just need to put down $12,000. And so you can kind of see how this $222,000 can really build up quickly. And once again, a huge contributor to this was just the scope of work in the space, it being almost 3 times the size, about 2,100 square feet. And then with all this work, a lot more HVAC piping to run, the electrical and the plumbing needing to go underground and then coming back up to the island bars, that just adds up. And frankly, we still were doing a lot of the work ourselves. We built out the bathrooms ourselves with tile. We did all of the painting. We painted the ceiling. We did the tile on the bar. Riley's dad helped us with a lot of the seating. And still, just construction, we're running that number right there. And this is just funny. I left this in because I think Riley put this in a long time ago, but all the permits just to get open, get rolling, get through the government systems, $5,000 or $5,600. That'll get you, you know what I mean? So let's jump over. So if you see here, we even had to space it out in between 2 categories beyond construction. We have to consider just what's going on in the space as far as the decor and the floor plan. Because there's so much space, more lighting, $10,000 for lighting. We try to get the best stuff we can. I know that there's different ways to cut around and cut corners, but if you want a space that'll last, a lot of times you have to invest in it. Seating, patio tables, $17,000. And that's just our some chairs and our outside seating. If we look at what Riley's dad did, that was $13,000, and that was just the cost. Imagine paying a professional who's not your dad to build out that. That'd probably be closer to $40,000, $50,000 for all of that woodwork that we got done in the space. Stuff like bathroom, shelving, storage. When you're thinking about your dream cafe, you're not thinking about bathroom, shelving, storage, but the next minute, you're spending $2,500 on this. Bar tile that we put on ourselves. This is just the cost of the tile, $3,300. Just the cost of the tile, $1,600 for the bathroom. And this was much cheaper tile, as you can see. Similar volume, but we went with something like more long lasting and high end for the bar. And we'll kind of get to that later with that, baller to budget or bootstrap to big build out. But you can see how we leaned into more like high quality pieces for the Dunwoody Cafe. And so this is just a snapshot of all of the work done in the space, and that's coming out to $65,000 to kind of furnish the cafe beyond the bar. Now, if we look at the bar, There it is. There's that espresso machine that's kind of dominating a lot of the budget right there that we didn't have in Alpharetta, but we just had to go, buy an espresso machine. And so we went with a mod bar, and that ran $30,000. You got 2 grinders, your drip brewer, milk pitcher rinser, sinks. We always ran out of ice in Alpharetta. That was a huge problem that we ran into. So we couldn't go with an under-counter ice machine in Dunwoody. And so we opted for, a higher quality ice machine, and boom, $7,500. Our dishwasher was always giving us trouble in Alpharetta because we opted for like the lowest end one. Boom, $6,000 for a nicer dishwasher. Same thing with our fridges. We were going through, no shade to the Avantco squad, but we were going through a lot of Avantco fridges in Alpharetta, so we had to opt for beverage air freezers refrigerators in Dunwoody. Boom, $4,000, $3,000, $5,000. And man, you can just see how much this adds up. Mugs and glasses, $2,500. Cutting board and knives, $500. Filtration, super necessary, $1,000. Maybe not something you're thinking about. Storage racks, $2,000. Starting cost from merch, $1,300. Retail fridge, $2,000. And so to get all that gear we need for the space, we're coming in at $92,000. And so we got a little summary here. We got for our equipment in Dunwoody, $92,000. For our decor, like furnishing the space, $65,000. And then the construction build out process, about $222,000. And what was nice about this space is that we got something called tenant improvement allowance, and we can kind of explain that a little bit more in another lesson. But in short, it's just the landlord investing in their space and helping you out with the build out so that it gives more value to their space that you're renting, And so with this, we were running, we had an SBA loan for Dunwoody. I don't see what that is. We had to get a separate loan for $80,000. We were able to start with $10,000 in working capital. We ran an Indiegogo for $21,000. And then that extra $60,000 was able to help as well. And so after the TI, it kind of went down to $320 here. And then, if you see here, total budget, $303, total cost, $330. And once again, this just kind of has to come out of your operating expenses as like the other cafe and the roastery kind of had to absorb and share this $26,000 that was left over. So this was just a super quick and also transparent dive into how much it costs to really open a coffee shop. And we're giving you just the Realio Dealio. These spreadsheets are in our Google Drive, and I didn't edit these. These are just, kind of ready to go. And so if you've been to our cafes, you can kind of see, okay, this cafe cost $380,000, and then Alpharetta cost, in 2019, where are we? What was it, $120,000? And it shows, we've invested in them over the years, but Dunwoody just has a bigger footprint, newer equipment, nicer equipment, and it was something that we had to jump towards. But we started small with Alpharetta and had to grow from there and keep investing in the space. And so that's a little work. So we're gonna jump into our next lesson after this. Thanks for listening.
Hey, thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. It always means so much if you are able to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, follow along with whatever we're doing. It means so much. So thank you.
Okay, so we just looked at why a coffee shop can cost so much money. And so now an inevitable question would be, where am I gonna get this money? And there are a few ways, obviously. One is, maybe you're a baller. Maybe you're rolling with it and this is just something you're passionate about and you want to invest. That's epic. And there are a lot of people that start coffee shops that way. Another way is people trading equity for investment. And so if people see that, your cafe is a worthy cause and they're interested in maybe a monthly distribution, they might give you money and without like an exact timeline say, hey, I'm expecting a payout at a certain point, probably through a monthly or yearly distribution of profits. And so that is nice in one way because you're not experiencing maybe the upfront pressure of, oh, I've got to give this person their money back immediately. And there's obviously some cons. You don't own 100% of your business, and it depends on how involved these investors might want to be in your operation. Another very possible option is crowdfunding. I typically see this done when it's like a part of the whole thing, as we've kind of showed for Alpharetta and Dunwoody, that like a GoFundMe, Kickstarter, Indiegogo was a part of the process. And it's kind of cool because you can let your community, your guest, if you're already serving in some capacity, be a part of the process. And then, hey, there's always bootstrapping. That was a big part of how Alpharetta got open, was that working capital of, we're saving all of our money from these events, we're not paying ourselves, we're doing this pop-up, and we're just trying to put as much money back in the business as possible. And then, a clear option that I feel like is on the table for so many, but maybe not explored, is an SBA loan. And if I'm gonna talk about SBA loans, I think I'm gonna need a computer. Thank you. SBA loans thank you. Cheers. SBA loans can be scary, honestly. I think before I get to SBA loans, I'd say there's also private loans. So for a couple times in our Alpharetta Cafe, some people that we met at church, a guy loved our vision and wanted to invest in some young people going into entrepreneurship. And that was a way that, it wasn't like an investor. We were able to pay him back so that we could retain equity in our business. But on to SBA loans, you can almost think of it as a mortgage for your home. You're leveraging your assets, your future investments in order to get some money up front. And most SBA loans are going to be rated at 13 to 16% interest rate, typically done at a 10-year term. And you might stop right there and say, am I going to run a business, a coffee shop, for 10 years? Because what if you only sign a 5-year lease? The last 5 years, you might be expected to pay back your loan payment of $5,000 for the next 5 years. So thinking that far ahead is crucial when it comes to getting an SBA loan. The 7A loan is the most common for cafe startups, and you'll need to invest around 10% of your own money to personally guarantee the loan. And thankfully, we're going to jump into our cafe viability spreadsheet in just a minute, but that is going to do a great job of taking the terms of a loan, if that's what you have, and giving you your loan payment. But just as an example, if you borrow $350,000 at 13.5% over the course of 10 years, that's going to be $5,300 as a monthly payment. And so when you're thinking about modeling your coffee shop, building it out, that's something you've got to figure out if you can afford to make a part of your monthly income, your ins and outs, your cash flow. So now we're going to hop into that cafe viability spreadsheet and kind of look at how a model of a cafe can actually work. All right, we're going to dive into something that has helped a lot of people decide how they can sustainably model their coffee shop. That would be the cafe viability spreadsheet. And I got it up on my screen here. Thankfully, Riley whipped this thing up and it is thorough, okay, up at the top. It'll give you a lot of instructions. So this is just a little quick tutorial. But always, if you're going to use it, you got to make a copy of it to use it. All right, so from here, let's jump over to the summary. This is kind of where you have all these tabs down low and you're just going to plug in data. You're going to plug in stuff that you may not super know, like, hey, how much are you expecting or hoping to make at this cafe per day? You may know some things already. Hey, how much is your loan? What's the interest rate? How long's the term? This is huge when you're like judging, okay, can I afford to take on this location? The rent calculator. I'm going to put in my price per square foot, my CAM, your common area maintenance. That's a sneaky one, okay? Basically just makes your average rent higher. So don't fall in love with that original price per square foot number. Make sure if you're signing a triple net lease that if there is CAM, you know what it is. And so this one's a little more, there's a couple, like the transaction calculator, the staffing and wages calculator. Might have to be a little abstract for you of like, okay, if I take this space, I'm expecting, these people, 3 people to work on bar every day. These are going to be their hours. And that takes a little bit of time, but definitely worth it to figure out what you can afford, what you can't afford. And even though this takes some time, it will help you envision from a sustainable point of view, can I afford to have X many people behind the bar? When you imagine your dream coffee shop, how many people are working? What are they doing? What are their roles? And you figuring out if you can afford that is such a huge key of it. Okay, this is a little bit more for if you already are rolling, but plugging in all of your operating expenses, that is such a sneaky large slice of a coffee shop. Your rent. I think Riley does an epic job already, so I don't have to get too into it, but he offers recommended amounts just to be looking at as far as how much you're paying towards different things. And so let's see, I don't know if rent was on here, if it was just in our, 5 to 10%. That's a really easy number to consider when it's like, all right, if my rent is $5,000 a month, I want to make sure that I'm going to be operating a coffee shop that makes at least $50,000 to $100,000 a month. Simple. And then this is a good place. Well, actually, let me back up. I was at operating expenses, kind of working my way backwards, but filling out all of these monthly expenses and what you're expecting, what you're budgeting for. Because if you build a budget early, you can start to really survive the ebbs and flows of the beginning and, as you grow and as you figure it out. So this is so key to get ahead on. And then you can jump down to these costs of goods percentage. Riley also does an epic job in sharing transparently our percentages, our costs. And so that's, if you don't know, but you say, hey, I want a coffee shop kind of like Valor, mostly sells coffee, then this is a great place to just kind of copy and paste that over and roll from there. But you're like, hey, I want more like a bakery. So maybe if you start doing your in-house food, that's going to go way down and it's more like 40% or something. I don't know. And then the fun part, hey, where do you think your money is going to be coming from? At Valor in 2023, 70% of our money came from coffee and tea drinks. 19% of it came from food. 18% of it came from retail coffee and 3% of merch. Knowing these numbers is also super helpful because you're like, wait, I'm an owner and all I've been working on all year is my merch and that's 3% of what I do. It's like, oh, maybe I should focus more on something else. Or I want to focus on it because I want to grow the number. So those are super helpful. Just in understanding like what kind of business you're operating, what you can afford. And then once you plug in all those numbers, you don't have to plug in all of them because it'll kind of take it section by section, which is super nice. But you'll begin to see like, okay, if I put in all my operating expenses and I have how much money I'm making, it'll let me know like, hey, your percentage is 17%. So you're right in the middle of your recommended amount. It's like, oh, great. And where is it? But hey, maybe this will shock you if you are new to the industry. And hey, I guess you most likely are if you're watching this. So thank you. But we have a recommended 10 to 15% net profit for a coffee shop. That might be shocking, and let alone this is not factoring in loan payments and working capital. So this number can actually be a lot lower than you expect because it's already going to so many different places. So when you see this number, it'll kind of help you see like, okay, my net profit end of the day after working capital, after loan payment, is there enough money to go around? Is there enough money to grow? And so as simple as it sounds, just to make coffee and sell it, that money can go to a lot of different places. And unfortunately, there's not a ton of net profit to go around. So building out the smartest and most efficient model that you can is going to be awesome. And then you can grow from there. And so I think this is a great tool to consider. Basically, if you've never considered this at any point in your business, but especially when it comes to finding the right space so that you can measure your expected business against your rent and your rent payments and things like that. So yeah, thank you for checking this one out. Hope you put it to use.
Hey, just as a reminder, we are providing all 3 of those spreadsheets for free on our online community for you to use. Just click the top link in the description of this video, get signed up. Once you're on the page, you scroll over to the left side, click resources, and they are all available for you right there. I hope you get a ton of value out of those spreadsheets. All right, back to it. All right, so you've sorted your finances, you feel personally ready to pursue this. Now let's talk about actually choosing a location, which, people say location, location, location for a reason. It's huge in contributing to your success as a coffee shop. And as we've opened both of our coffee shops, the way we've chosen those spaces is through a lens that I'm about to share with you, different criteria that we've run this decision through. And I'm actually going to explain this criteria through the lens of our Alpharetta location, which was our first one. We're going to start with probably the most important contributor to success in your location, and that is foot traffic. The decision to go to a coffee shop, a lot of times is an impulse decision, but is planned sometimes as well. And the more foot traffic you have, the more people walking by your space, the more that impulse decision is just going to hit someone on their way to work. But even beyond just people deciding to go to your cafe, it's also people knowing that you exist. If someone hangs out in the area that your coffee shop is in, whether you're open or not, and they see coffee and it looks cool in there and there's a bunch of people and they like the vibe, they're going to bookmark that in their brain and come back to it at a later date and include it in their plans maybe for the next day. So foot traffic, we're giving 20 points on the scale. These will all add up to 100, and maybe you could take your locations you're looking at through the same criteria. So foot traffic is the first one. You can see on my screen here that this area right here that we're in, this is all walkable. And this is one of the things that attracted us to this city when we got the opportunity, is that there was lots of people walking around and talking to government officials there. That was a big priority in planning this area, as we want it to be walkable. The next would be the residential effect. How many people are living around your coffee shop? Because it's not like people just kind of sit at their home all day and are thinking of things to do. And if you're close by, they'll go to your coffee shop. That's a part of it. But it's also when they leave their house, what route are they taking to their destination? And is that going by your coffee shop? And we'll get into that a little bit more with the commuter criteria. But all of these roads here, if you zoom out, this is all just tons and tons of high income residential areas. So those are people with expendable income that are patronizing Valor, driving by our cafe. So that leads nicely into the commuter side of things. There are endless offices all around this area, a lot of tech companies. I was looking up some stats about Alpharetta, just the thousands and thousands of square feet of office space just all around this area. So they are leaving their house, driving by the cafe, and going to their office and including us in their daily plans. And beyond all of this criteria, I just want to mention, coffee shops are a volume business. You need to get as many transactions through the door on a daily basis as you can. And when people are going to work and including your coffee shop in their plans, they're going to be patronizing your cafe day after day, or at least hopefully multiple times per week. If you can have a location that's situated near some major roads and highways, and hopefully in between people's houses and where they work, that's going to serve you really well. You can see here we have this Highway 19 here, Highway 9, and zooming out, there's a lot of highways sort of all around this area. And so I think that serves us really well. Next, I would talk about like offices. As I already mentioned, there's plenty of offices all around here, lots of tech companies, like I said. If you have a lot of offices around your space, that's just lots of people that are frequenting that area and are going to go by your cafe. The destination factor. The city that we're in Alpharetta, has a lot going on inside the city limits, including lots of good restaurants, a grocery store nearby, offices, churches, all sorts of stuff that people are going to this city just to hang out. You know, maybe someone is planning their Saturday plans. They want to go to the farmer's market and just go to Alpharetta and kind of see what happens. And like I said, those are all people that could go to your cafe or at least find out about your cafe. And that is huge. The next one's a little bit less sexy, but very, very impactful, and that's parking. The parking in Alpharetta, where our first cafe is, there's lots of spaces all around. You know, there's street parking right outside of our cafe. There are parking decks with multiple levels. But at the end of the day, I would say our first location here scores pretty low in the parking category, especially compared to our second location. Our second location is sort of like in a strip mall, and there are just endless parking spaces all around the property. And so people come there, they park, and they can pretty much always guarantee a space. Whereas what I have pulled up here, it's kind of like a fat chance that they're 100% going to guarantee a space. And that absolutely negatively affects us. But you weigh the parking with the destination factor. I would say the more parking you have, the less of a destination your area is. And the opposite is true. It's like the less parking you have, the more your city is probably a destination because there's just more stuff going on there. So definitely factor in parking and consider how many spaces your employees would take up. And then, you know, guesstimate how many spaces you might have available for your guests that need to be coming in and out of your space. Again, coffee is a pretty quick transaction, so people want to know that they can get a parking spot, get a coffee, and go about their business. The next criteria is footprint. Our two cafes couldn't be more different when it comes to footprint. Our first coffee shop is around 1,000 square feet, but the front area where the actual action happens is like 700 square feet or less. And so it's pretty packed in there. I think we only have around 20 to 25 spaces, but I love that. Like it adds to the energy of the space because it kind of always feels busy because there's just less seats and less space to go around. Whereas our second location is north of 2,000 square feet. So there's lots of seats, but that presents different challenges. You know, there's more dishes to be done because there's more tables that people are getting drinks for here. Just kind of depends on what you want and how you're weighing the footprint, the square footage of your space with all the rest of this criteria. And then lastly, you've got to mention the median income of the people around this area. If you're in an area with lots of tech companies, with lots of beautiful homes, you're probably good. You have a lot of people around there that are, they have expendable income that they can go by and get your $6, $7 lattes on the daily basis. So that definitely factors into it as well. So as you're starting to, you know, drive down the road and see that old dilapidated building that is maybe an old car garage with the nice roll-up doors, you think to yourself, that would make a really good coffee shop. You're right, but you need to run that location through all these criteria because it may just be that location is a little bit more of a headache and a little bit more of a high expense up front to get open, as opposed to maybe something like our second location where it's in a strip mall. It doesn't look as cool, but the parking scores really high. So factoring all these things in together when you're trying to decide your location is going to serve you well. I remember this phase of deciding our location being very, very daunting because of the fact that we were signing a lease. And a lot of times leases are, 5 to 10 years long. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, what if we get ourselves in a situation that we really regret and we are legally bound to this thing, we default on our lease, all these what ifs. But I'll tell you this, our commercial real estate agent brought so much value to the table when we were sorting through all of this. This real estate agent can help you negotiate your lease. And more than all that, they can kind of help you define terms. This was our first time we've ever signed a lease in a commercial sense. And so having him explain what TI is, and beyond that, not just explaining it, but helping us understand how much TI we need and what's, industry best practice around those things. So if you don't know a commercial real estate agent, I would definitely suggest getting to know one and just telling them all of your goals, what your best case scenario is for your location, where you want to be, and maybe even take them through this list of the criteria we've shared on this course today. We're going to provide a PDF for you that tells you all of this criteria, and then has a whole long vocabulary list of things that we wish we knew when we were signing leases, and we'll share with you today. So be sure to take a look at that and just familiarize yourself with all the terms so that you can move a little bit faster maybe, and explain to your real estate agent what you're looking for. Most leases, like I said, are going to be 3, 5, 10 years long. Obviously, the longer lease that you sign, the better, more favorable rates you're going to get, maybe even a lower rent or better TI, because that landlord is taking that longer lease as a signal of security to them, because they own that building. They know, man, I'm going to lock in this coffee shop for the next 5, 10 years. That's really good income for me. So you can kind of give them a little bit more incentive if that aligns with your personal long-term plans. You wouldn't want to open a coffee shop and just think like, this is going to be a turnkey operation. We're going to get it off the ground and I'll just focus on another business in the next 2 years. You want the length of your lease to coincide and be congruent with your personal plans and what you want out of this business. So get in touch with a commercial real estate agent, show them this criteria list, and make sure you're on the same page with them as someone you trust. So up until this point, you've just been at home planning for your coffee shop. But for our next module, module 4, we're going to talk about Buildout, equipment, and the operational setup that you need to be in a good place once you decide for your location. So be sure to keep watching as we explore module 4.
Okay, gang, good work on module 3. Keep it up. As a treat for you guys, after this module, we trained our own AI model, ChatGPT, called Coach Valor. So Coach Valor's pretty much got anything we've ever done in its brain. And so as you're going throughout the build-out process, planning, wherever you're at, you can ask Coach Valor questions about where you're at and help chart your course along the way. Just as a soundboard, what would the Valor crew do in a situation? Ask Coach Valor. They'll help you out.
You found your space and you're getting close to signing a lease, hopefully. So now comes one of the most important steps, designing a cafe that actually works for your business model. And today we're going to help you plan a realistic and efficient cafe build out, and it all starts with your design. The main objective here is simple. Help you design a space that supports consistent execution and actually can make money. We're not talking about making it pretty, we're talking about making it functional. So we're going to look at how to, first off, design and define your service model. So the first question, and everything else will depend on this, is what is your service model? Do you want to primarily be a to-go express in and out cafe? Or do you want to be a bigger floor plan, more chairs coffee shop? Or are you thinking about something like a central bar setup? All these decisions are key. And let's just take the central bar, for example. If you go with that, other things are going to fall in line. Your HVAC requirements change, your plumbing, electrical goes underground, and your budget goes way up. So just every decision and step along the way will inform your build out process. And so the more clear you can get on what you want for your cafe, the easier it's going to be to start making it happen. So let's talk about matching your space to your sales. Remember that cafe viability spreadsheet we built? There's a breakdown of your sales percentage in there, and that should reflect in your space planning. So let's just say you're projecting 70% of your income to come from coffee and tea. Is that taking up 70% of your functional space behind the bar? Or if you want to be more food oriented, are you making space for a kitchen and prep area in your cafe? And this is where a lot of people can get it wrong. They design what looks good instead of what matches their business model. Okay, let's camp out on food for a second. A big fork in the road is, what am I going to do about food? How much food are you going to be planning to do in-house? Because that's going to affect your permitting status and your risk level. In-house food prep means higher standards and more frequent inspections. Like if you're cooking with oil or on a stovetop, a lot of times you're going to have to get a hood, and that can take your build-out budget up $50,000. But if food revenue is a big part of your service model, that's just something you're going to have to plan for from the beginning. And regardless of your food offerings, prepare to plan and budget for a grease trap. Because whether or not you like it, we're working with milk, and code enforcement in your area is going to expect that you provide a grease trap to catch that milk before it goes down the drain. This trap also will need to be pumped typically quarterly by an environmental waste service company. And if you're aware of this, you'll know a big decision. Do I have a smelly above ground grease trap that's under my sink that costs $500, or am I paying $5,000 plus to put something underground? And my biggest piece of advice here is to negotiate with your landlord to try to put in an underground grease trap for you as part of your lease deal. All right, let's talk about storage. Here's something we're going to suggest right off the bat. You're probably going to need more storage than you think. We've seen spaces sacrifice on their storage and end up with really overcrowded back rooms that can lead to shortages and confusion. So you need to plan for adequate storage from the start, not as an afterthought. Okay, things like the number of seats you have in your cafe, that needs to match how many bathrooms you have for government compliance. This is such a good time to be talking with an architect who knows these rules. And a lot of this comes down to conveying your vision and letting it run through the filter of your architect, because the architect knows all these rules that you need to follow for a proper build out. And typically, the architect draws the plans and then sends them to what's called an MEP engineer. That stands for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, who builds out the scope of your work that your general contractor is going to use to bid on the project. One of the earliest things you need to start working toward when you've found a space is getting with an architect. You need to pay them from the start to draw up plans so you can start getting quotes and start your permitting process. If you've gotten really close to signing a lease, you need to start finding an architect who can draw plans for that space. All right, now let's talk about designing your bar. You should think through your flow of service and imagine the journey of an order going from the register to completion, start to finish. Once again, this is where that cafe viability spreadsheet can help you out. If you've built out your labor schedule, you can understand how many people you're expecting behind the bar at a time and what you can realistically expect each person to handle at their station. In Alpharetta, we have a smaller bar. We can only fit up to like 5 or 6 people. But in Dunwoody, we wanted a higher production ceiling, so we spaced out the bar so more people could plug into their roles. So if you're going to be working in a smaller space, you need models that make sure your bar can flow with 1 or 2 people operating it. And bar flow, it should generally move in a pattern, left to right, right to left. So if you have multiple people on the bar, you're not stepping on each other's toes. Now, think about where you can put your bar that allows natural flow for people coming in, ordering, and waiting for their drinks. Let's take Alpharetta, for example. The ordering area is so close to the front door that sometimes people, they walk right past it. And we've learned from that lesson in Dunwoody. We've made sure that the ordering area was further back so a natural line could form to the door. Now we're going to show you the actual plans from both of our cafes. I'm going to show you the things that we love about these layouts and some things that we wish we would have done differently. Having real examples to reference will be powerful when you're planning out your own space. Okay, so now we are looking at the architectural drawings for Alpharetta, and I also have pulled up the drawings for Dunwoody. I'm just going to kind of show you some things that we were thinking when we were building this out. So something that you want to be considering is what the architect would call your ingress and your egress, your in and your outs. And so for us, if you see my mouse, this entrance is right over here. And so what I was mentioning earlier is that the distance from our point of sale concierge hub to the door, we can only fit about like 4 people in line. And so often we have people going right past the point of sale and trying to talk to the barista more in the back, thinking that's where you would order. And so we go over to, the wrong way. If we look at our Dunwoody space, what we did was people walk in here or here, and they're not going to take their order until they get to this corner, that point of sale spot. And that kind of leads into another huge pro, which was line management. So we can probably fit about 20 people waiting in line here, whereas in Alpharetta, we can only fit, unfortunately, like 4. And so you can kind of start to see that we're building off of our mistakes in our first cafe and trying to remedy them in our next. All right, so let's look at staying on point of sale, the connection. So something that we really care about is human connection in our cafes. And so when someone is right here taking an order, that little number 16, and someone's standing across the counter, there's something in the way. There's a bar in the way. And so in Dunwoody, one of my favorite things is that we put our registers, we have 2 even to help with line management, and we put them on the corners so that if, the person working is comfortable, they can be standing out here and just talking to and serving these guests, human to human, as I like to say, because there's something super dehumanizing about the service industry where we kind of turn off and we just, we go for duty, not for, serving people. And so this was a huge boost for us. Something you can already tell as well, being in this Dunwoody, is that we have these islands. So there's so many points of entry, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can kind of go in and out anywhere behind the bar in Dunwoody versus in Alpharetta. Because of the size of the space, we kind of had to slam everything in the corner. And so, if you're in these positions back here, like our support position, our brewer position, you're not leaving the bar as much, which just kind of limits some guest interaction. And it kind of can bottleneck this space, because right here across where it says point of sale or POS, that's where we're putting in our pastries. And so a lot of times we'll be restocking and running dishes and someone's coming through. And so that can get a little crowded versus in Dunwoody, we have so much flow. And when we're talking about kind of back to ingress and egress, where people are waiting, in Dunwoody, you can have people waiting in this area, and these areas are kind of common space. If you know our cafe, you actually know that these booths aren't here. It was an idea we had, but we liked the idea of having a little bit more negative space because we knew that we'd have kind of groups of people hanging out, waiting on their drinks. And what we decided to do with that space instead was boost another thing. If you remember from the cafe viability spreadsheet, I think we took the numbers from when Dunwoody wasn't even open yet. Our merch sales were 3%. And if we're looking at this layout in Alpharetta, you might be asking yourself, well, where's the merch? The merch is it's stored in this corner of the store that if you're a guest walking in the space and going to order, you're pretty much just bypassing and you don't really get to see. And the only way you'd know that there's merch there is if you turned around. But typically people are going to walk in, order, and then go wait somewhere else because you can't really wait in this area. And so something that we were trying to boost was more area to look at our retail bags, our coffee boxes, our merch. And so we kind of have this whole area dedicated for some grab and go drinks, some merch, just kind of bigger space, even while you're waiting. And so what can happen is that someone might order their drink, hang out over here, peep the merch. And then if there's something they like, they can just kind of hop back in line and buy it right there. And even further than that, we moved our coffee box display. Our friend Zion made an epic custom inlay cabinet where all of our coffee boxes kind of sit in these cutouts. And they're right here in line where people are waiting, which gives them a great opportunity to check out our coffee while they wait. So that's just showing you some things that we learned between like what kind of were forced into with a smaller space in Alpharetta, and then how we were kind of able to expand, give a little breathing room, and try to like get some more life and dynamic out of our cafes. Getting your cafe design right from the start saves you money, frustration, and operational headaches down the road. So you really should take the time to plan this correctly. Next lesson, we're going to dig in deeper on what architects do and how to manage your construction timeline. Okay, you have signed your LOI and you are moving forward with lease negotiations. Now comes the part that makes or breaks budgets and timelines. Managing your build out. Today, we're going to cover what to expect from contractors, how to work with architects, and the reality of permits and delays. The main points we're hitting today are what you can expect from your general contractor, how to work with your architect to get drawings done, and how permits get pulled, and what you can do to save yourself a little bit of money in the process. So let's talk about the reality of permitting delays and how to stay within your budget when everything seems designed to blow it up. All right, so let's back up chronologically. You've signed your LOI, you're negotiating your lease, and hopefully with a real estate agent that's helping you. We recommend building out your own drawings now, whether that's on paper or just a computer mock-up. And here's something to know. Most spaces, they're rectangles, they're squares, so you really can cast your vision and get 70% of the way there before you even find your space. So you definitely want to know how big your target space is though, so you can start listing out equipment, showing where your bar goes and where you might want to put your tables, how many chairs do you want. And all this, it's going to affect your HVAC, your electrical, plumbing, all those runs. And so notice what is already in your space that you're looking at. If there are bathrooms in an ideal location, you'd want to build around that because that's money saved. And that's exactly what we did in our Dunwoody build out. Your architect needs specs on all the equipment you plan to purchase to properly map out plumbing and electrical needs. Build your equipment list as soon as possible. We recommend taking all your equipment specs, putting them in a tool like ChatGPT, and asking for a full breakdown of your electrical and plumbing requirements. This is something that's really helpful for your architect because something that is a little sneaky is the amount that a coffee shop uses water and electricity. Your architect or GC might underestimate the amperage your space needs. For example, in Alpharetta, we were hit with a pretty big $10,000 bill on top of our budget because we had to drop in a sub panel for more electricity. And the exact same thing happened at our lab in our warehouse, and that cost about $22,000 to run power all the way across the space to power our bar. So make sure you choose an architect who is willing to collaborate with you and help you save some money. So for example, you may want to consolidate all of your equipment to one area of the floor plan to avoid unnecessary, costly electrical or plumbing runs. The bottom line is this: cast the vision of your space to your architect and rely on them to point out opportunities to conserve your budget without compromising too much. Okay, let's talk about choosing your general contractor, because your architect should be wrapping up plans soon, and it's time to be reaching out to multiple general contractors to bid on your project. The more complete your architect's plans are, the more accurate your quote is going to be. And I can't stress it enough that you really should reach out to multiple contractors because you are going to get a varied response in bids. And it really is true though, you get what you pay for. So for example, on our build out in Alpharetta, we went with the cheapest contractor that we could find, and we really skimped in this way, but we paid in the long run because we had to worry about him doing something incorrectly, taking too long, or not following through. And frankly, all of those things happened. A general contractor is like the project planner who activates all of his subcontractors. And subcontractors are the people who do millwork, plumbing, electrical. And if one subcontractor can get delayed, it's not just a delay for that one, but it delays all the subcontractors that follow. Your build out, it's a step-by-step process where subcontractors, they can't do their work unless the subcontractor before them finishes theirs. Okay, here is a harsh reality. Your general contractor is managing multiple projects at the same time. You care the most about your project. So you being there is key. The more involved you can be during the build out process, being in your space, talking to your general contractor and subcontractors about problems they're facing, delays they're experiencing, being part of the problem-solving process, the faster your build-out can happen. And trust us, we experienced that firsthand. Because the less involved you are, the more common it is to see delays across the board. So let's talk about early inspections. The first consistently real inspection is your rough-in. That's before you close things that have been open, like walls or concrete. If you're running electricity and plumbing through those, it all needs to be open and inspected before being closed. And this is where delays can start to hurt you, because if something fails inspection, you're waiting for the subcontractors to come back, remedy the problem, and you need to schedule the inspector to come back. So let's talk a little bit about doing some work yourself to save as much money as you can. If you're handy, ask your general contractor if you can do some of the work. Often the greatest expense with a build out is labor. And you're probably not going to be doing the plumbing or the electrical or the HVAC, but if you've done tile work, painting, finishing work like baseboards or trim, you can do those instead of a subcontractor. And make sure you can hold up your end of the bargain though, and get your work done in a timely manner, because if not, you really should just consider paying the subcontractors instead of delaying your project even more. Here are two big things to consider when choosing your architect and general contractor. First is you need to understand who is responsible for getting your permits through all the government institutions, because sometimes it's the architect and sometimes it's the general contractor. But you just need to make sure at least one of them is willing to handle this process for you, because honestly, it's very bureaucratic and difficult. And often these professionals have good relationships with your local officials and they know how to get their permits moving along. And this can be honestly the longest portion of your build out is waiting on permits. And secondly, you want to make sure that you're working with a general contractor and architect who is budget friendly and collaborative when it comes to letting you work on your space if that's a priority for you. These are all things we wish we would have known when we were doing our build outs. Permits take time, inspections, they get delayed, subcontractors, they get backed up on other projects. But the most important thing is that you need to plan for this. Build extra time into your timeline and extra money into your budget for the unexpected. In all of our experience, we've yet to come across a build out that meets or precedes its initial launch date. The contractors who quote the lowest aren't always the cheapest when you factor in delays, poor workmanship, and the stress of constantly managing problems. So the more you trust your general contractor to get the work done, the better. And the biggest delay typically experienced during your build out is permitting. Legally, little to no work can be done in your space until you have your building permits. When you are building your plans with your architect, it is key to be explicit with your architect on the likelihood that your plans will pass through permitting. Because if they are rejected and sent back with comments, you very often have to resubmit and get back in line. This can potentially add weeks or months to the permitting process. Here are your action steps. First, create your equipment list with full specs, voltage, amperage, size. Second, research GCs and architects in your area and start building relationships before you need quotes. Third, understand who handles permits in your situation, you, the general contractor, or the architect. And most importantly, prepare yourself to be involved in this process. Your build out will go smoother if you're present, engaged, and ready to problem solve alongside your contractors. I'm going to leave you with one more thought. It is so important to ask any question that comes to mind when it comes to your plans and the build-out process. Do not be afraid to annoy your GC and architect with clarifying questions, because once the work is done, they leave and you stay. And you want to make sure that the work is done right. Managing a build-out is not glamorous, but getting it right sets you up for everything that follows. So please take the time to choose a good contractor, stay involved in the process, and plan for delays. On the next lesson, we'll talk about selecting the right equipment for your cafe and how to balance quality with budget. You have chosen an architect, received multiple bids for your project, and selected a general contractor to start working on your space, hopefully. Now comes the part where you have to spend some money and buy your equipment.
Hey, before we move on to that, it would really help us out if you subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there. Give this video a like. Thanks so much. Back to it.
We are going to talk about selecting and ordering equipment, one of the most critical parts of your build out that can make or break your timeline and your budget. Hopefully, you should already have made your equipment list that your GC is going to be referencing for all power and plumbing needs. Your equipment list actually goes on your build out plans, so that's key. And you need to make sure you have all of your equipment ready to go when it's time to install, which thankfully it happens at one of the last points in the build out process, because this is mostly when the bar is constructed, countertops are done, and the plumbing and electrical are ready for installation. This timing though is crucial because even the smallest change in equipment, like your refrigerator size, it could lead to your bar fridge not fitting under your counter or not having enough power for a piece of equipment. Here we come with another example. In Alpharetta, we changed from a low heat to a high heat dishwasher, and that made us have to totally rerun the power to that area, and that cost extra money. Money. All right, let's understand lead times. An important thing to look at now is lead times for your equipment. A lot of things that you can get on restaurant equipment websites like Webstront, but some things you might need to get through a coffee equipment sales company or an espresso machine manufacturer, or getting something custom. Because depending on what machine you want, lead times could get up to 3 to 6 months, especially if you're trying to get like a unique customizable espresso machine. In our experience, we always wanted to start with a nice espresso machine. We like to recommend La Marzocco or something of that quality. We also like to get nice grinders. We usually recommend something like Mazzer or Malkonig, or a nice batch brewer like a Curtis or a Fetco, because these are going to be anchor elements to your space that make your primary product. And if you partner with us as your wholesale partner, we can get you discounted pricing on quality brands. When buying your espresso machine and water filtration, we recommend partnering with a local coffee tech that can warranty, install, and service this equipment. If we could offer any other advice here, when you're budgeting equipment, try to get high quality coffee gear. This will go a long way, and typically, if you don't do this, you will end up paying in other ways while you're open, because it's not fun to constantly have an espresso machine tech come out to your shop because your machine just isn't working. You need to prioritize your espresso machine in your budget. Let me say that again. You need to prioritize the espresso machine in your budget. Let me say that again. No, I'm kidding. When it comes to the less sexy pieces of equipment in your space, not all refrigerators are created equal. Laugh track. You should consider this high variation in cost on refrigeration to be true to its value. A cheap refrigerator genuinely does not function as well as an expensive refrigerator. The more you open a refrigerator door, the more it will have to perform up to its standards. So, if you're going to buy cheaper refrigerators, just make sure the refrigerators you're opening the most are the ones that are highest quality, something like a Beverage Air or a True. We like to have under-counter fridges behind the bar, And if you have space though in your back room for double door stand-up fridges, that's great because you can do a lot more storage there. And you may need more refrigeration than you expect. For example, a lot of times your milk delivery comes on a weekly basis. Our cafes are set up with a local dairy farm, and we need to be able to store 50 to 60 gallons of milk at a time per week. And that can take up a lot of space quickly. We have constantly stayed away from used equipment, even though it's cheaper, just for the risk. We have heard stories where it has gone very well, but for as many of those, we've definitely heard the horror stories of just buying a machine that flat out doesn't work or breaks a week later. Okay, let's talk about timing your equipment orders because it can be difficult to decide on when to order your equipment because if you order it too early, you don't have a space to put it, and that's a big problem. But if you order it too late, it may not show up in time. In our first location, we ordered all of our equipment way too early to play it safe, and we stored it all in the center of our build-out space with a tarp. And even still though, it got super dirty and got paint all over it, and it kind of slowed down the build-out process. If you have an alternative space to store your equipment and you have the cash flow to buy it early, it's much better to buy early because you avoid it arriving late. That would be honestly one of your worst nightmares. Your build-out and cafe opening being delayed because you don't have your espresso machine yet. We have talked a lot about starting smart instead of starting big. So if there are parts of your menu or parts of your cafe concept that you can't afford yet, that's okay. We grew into projects like cold brew because getting a kegerator fridge, getting the right kegging setup, gas hookups, all that can cost up to $10,000 if you want to do it at scale. And that was just not something we could afford at the time. Some things may be nice to have in the beginning, but it's important to focus on the must-haves, like your espresso machine, your grinder, your brewer, your refrigerators. Action steps. Number 1, finalize your equipment list with exact specs and lead times. Second, prioritize your coffee equipment in the budget. Don't skimp on the machines that make your primary product. Third, plan your equipment ordering timeline carefully, balancing lead times with storage needs. Remember, your equipment choices affect everything from your build-out timeline to your daily operation once you're open. Next, we will talk about everyone's favorite part of the build-out: inspections, permits, and insurance. Let's go. The end is in sight. The space that was once empty is coming to life and beginning to look a little bit like the cafe of your dreams. Only a few things stand in your way: insurance policies, government officials, and pieces of paper. In this lesson, we're talking about preparing for inspections and your final walkthrough, getting properly insured and permitted. Turns out, unfortunately, you may need more pieces of paper from the government than you initially thought. So with this, let us turn and enter the permit maze. Dun, dun, dun. There are permits like wastewater and sewage permits, certificates of occupancy, business licenses and occupational tax certificates, food service permits from the health department, fire marshal inspections, and more. Obviously, it can seem overwhelming, especially when you're knee-deep in your build-out. So my first piece of advice is to take a deep breath and know that it's gonna be okay. My next piece of advice, similar to what I've said about talking to your GC and your architect, is that you need to be humble and ask all the questions. Talk to your GC about which permits they will acquire on your behalf and which permits you are responsible for. In most cases, all the people who are going to be inspecting and looking over your construction plans want you to succeed, even though it may not feel like it sometimes. Your GC is typically responsible for acquiring your certificate of occupancy, or your CO, and your fire marshal inspection. Once you have these permits, the GC's work is done in most cases. and they've completed their work in the space. On the other hand, you are responsible for getting a few things. Typically, your wastewater permit, which lets you drain water into the city system. This you will acquire through your county water sewer department. Another thing, just a reminder from earlier, you do want to have set up your LLC and through the IRS, your employer identification number or your EIN. You also need to start working towards your food service permit. That's acquired through your county's health department. And unfortunately, there's a little side quest there for 1 to 2 days of becoming a ServSafe certified food manager, which is accomplished through a surprisingly lengthy online course. But you can do it, just knock it out. You also need what's called a seller's permit, which comes with a sales tax number that's required if you're selling taxable goods. Just go to your state's Department of Revenue to snag that puppy. Next, your business license / occupational tax certificate. They typically go by a different name, and these can be acquired through your city municipality. Typically, that's putting a lot of things that you've already got together. And bonus round, hey-o! Before you hang up your signs or get your mural painted on the side of your cafe, you probably need to consult with your city to obtain a signage permit. Ooh. And I know this stage can be grueling, but just remember, you're now that much closer to opening your doors and starting your business. Let's talk about being proactive with these inspectors. The ultimate cheat code at this stage is to be proactive by reaching out to the powers that be to ensure what you need to do in order to pass all your inspections with flying colors. For example, both of our cafes, they're actually in different counties. And while we were building them out, I just went ahead and reached proactively out to both health departments and consulted with them, asking for checklists and anything that they could give me to help me prepare our space for the opening inspection. They were honestly more than happy to deliver a checklist of everything that I was able to prepare. So when that day came, that we could start on the right foot with that relationship and have everything right out of the gate to start with a 100 health score. That always feels good and is a huge win. Similarly, your building inspectors and your fire marshals will be dealing with your general contractor, who should have a lot of experience in these areas. So honestly, I would worry less about those and let that take care of itself. And you should be going to your local city hall or county office and begin to start the process of understanding all the different pieces of information that they need from you so you can get your business license and your certificate of occupancy underway. That is going to be key. Now, when it comes to insurance, you are required to obtain a couple policies such as workers' comp and general liability. This may seem like uncharted territory for most, but simply get in touch with an insurance agency, share the insurance requirements that honestly are typically found in your lease, and the agent will know what to do. Once again, do not be afraid to ask the dumb questions and don't be afraid to shop around for multiple quotes. All of these permits and licenses are kind of like different pieces of a puzzle that slowly come together the closer you get to opening. And sometimes you need one in order to get the other. Sometimes you need multiple permits before you can get the next one. But just rest assured that people do this all the time and you can too. Time for more action steps. First, make a list of all the permits and licenses you need for your specific location and business type. Second, start reaching out proactively to your health department and other inspection agencies to get their checklist. They want to help. Third, work with your general contractor to understand the building inspection timeline. And lastly, start getting your insurance policies underway. This may not be the most fun part, but seriously, start this process early because some permits can take weeks to process, and you don't want permits to be the thing that delay your opening. And honestly, as we all know, government agencies can be a little slow to respond, so that early and often is always our suggestion. The inspection and permit process feels bureaucratic and overwhelming. Frankly, it is. But it's just another step towards opening your doors and fulfilling your mission. Be proactive, ask questions, and lean on the experience of your GC and architect. You paid them to help you out with this. And remember, you're almost there. This marks the end of our largest module so far because it is such a key part to setting up your cafe for success.
If you are looking to purchase some equipment and take the next step, this is where a partnership with Valor and serving our coffee can really start to add value to your operation. Not only do we know a lot of trusted brands and stuff like that, but we can actually get you a good bit of discount on some really high quality brands that we use on a daily basis in our cafe. So we do this in our wholesale program because frankly, we don't want our wholesale customers to be using bad equipment. We want you to be set up the best way you can to serve our coffee the best way you can and represent our brand well. So if you want to learn more about that, go to valor.coffee/wholesale, get some free samples, get on a call with me or someone from our team, and we'll take the next step. All right, back to it. Okay, first of all, if you've made it this far, congratulations. Let's keep going. You're nearing the finish line of your build out, thinking about hiring your team, getting close to opening your doors. Now comes something that will determine whether your business thrives or just survives, which is building a culture that people want to be a part of. Today, we're talking about core values, not the meaningless words on a wall, but the operating system that runs your entire company. Whether you like it or not, every company has a culture, whether good or bad. And it's on you as the leader to be intentional about creating the culture that you want. Your company culture points towards one question: what do you want to be known for? And here's the reality. Most businesses set mission, vision, and values because someone told them that they should. They sit down in a room, brainstorm some nice sounding words, put them on the website, and wonder why nothing changes. All right, so before we continue, let's define what we mean when we say mission, vision, values through an analogy we've used over the years. Let's pretend your company is a train. The vision of your company can be compared to the destination the train is headed towards. The whole reason the train is expending all of this energy is to make it to the destination. The vision is what your company, or the train in this example, is aimed at. Next, the mission. The mission of your company can be likened to the fuel or the energy source the train is using to get to the destination. Your mission should be something you and your team can wake up every day and do to get closer to your vision. And lastly, the values. Your core values are the train tracks that keep you and your train pointed towards your vision and funnel the energy produced from your mission towards your vision. For us, our vision is matching the top 1% of coffee with the top 1% of experience in hospitality. Our mission is uplifting people through coffee. Our 3 core values keep us on track towards that vision. We started with 7 core values, then we had 5, now we have 3. Why? Because we've learned something very important. The confused mind does nothing. When your team has to burn more mental calories to think about something, they're less likely to do that thing. If you have 10 values, it's going to be harder for your team to digest and understand than just 3 values. When you're starting a company, you may think you need core values right away. So you come up with something because you don't have anything to draw from yet, because you're not really in business yet. But 8 years into running our company, we had something powerful. We could look at our business and see what we were already doing well. We could identify the culture that was naturally emerging and just put words to it. Your core values should reflect what's already happening in your company, not what you wish was happening. Core values work like a trellis at a vineyard. If you go to a vineyard where they're growing grapes, you see beautiful growth and vines everywhere. But those vines, they need a structure to grow on. You can't have the fruit without the structure, and the structure is the trellis. That is exactly what your mission, vision, and values are for your business. In a high turnover industry like coffee, your team and culture can just be whatever group of people you have working at that given time. But if you have an evergreen structure that never changes, your mission, vision, and values, you can hire, fire, give feedback, and lead from that foundation. And that keeps your culture growing the right fruit, no matter who's on your team. So let me walk you through our 3 core values at Valor and why they work for us. The first is put empathy into action. This isn't just feeling bad for someone. It's anticipating and meeting needs before they're even communicated. When you see a mom struggling with a stroller at the door coming in, empathy is recognizing that's hard, that must be difficult. But putting empathy into action is stopping what you're doing, putting that mom first to help her. The second core value is grow together. We're not trying to see people individually run past everyone else on the team. We're team-oriented and want to see everyone grow together. We recognize superpowers in our team and let those strengths cover each other's weaknesses. The third value is it's cool to care. This is our stewardship value. Instead of finding the minimum standard not to get fired, we want people to have their eyes up, always seeking to go above and beyond. We want people who believe we've entrusted something valuable to them. Each of our values starts with an action verb. Put, grow, care. They're not abstract concepts. They're things you do. We also made sure each value applies to every department and every interaction. Whether someone's getting a box of coffee shipped to their house or visiting our cafe, all 3 values should be evident in their experience. Having good values on paper means nothing if they don't change and influence behavior. So here's what we do on a daily basis to enforce our values. We break down each value into weekly themes with specific focuses. One week might be cleanliness under putting empathy into action because people want to be in a clean space. Another week might be understanding our coffees better so we can communicate more effectively with guests. You can't just say, let's put empathy into action for the next 3 months. That's too vague, too big. You need bite-sized, specific improvements. So let's get 1% better today at this very specific thing. The most important part of implementing values is collaboration. Instead of telling your team what to do, ask them what they see. Get them in groups and ask, when you think about putting empathy into action, what specific things come to mind? The things you choose to focus on should come out of the mouths of the people who are going to do those things. That's how you get buy-in instead of resistance. Growing towards your clearly set values helps you identify who's actually committed to your culture, who's in, who's out. When you're all just floating around without direction, it's hard to tell who's engaged and who's not. But when you say, everyone, we're going this way, and one person says, no, then you know exactly who doesn't want to be a part of what you're building. Good core values aren't just nice words. They build better people and better culture. Working at our company has made our team members better mothers, fathers, friends, and members of society. We're catching people at a pivotal time in their lives, and so are you if you're hiring for baristas. Often they're stepping into independent adulthood. The communication skills, feedback ability, and vulnerability they learn here will serve them for life in their next chapter. So if you're looking to build a good culture at your future shop, here are your action steps. First, ask yourself the simple but huge question, what do I want my company to be known for? Second, keep it simple. There's no need to sacrifice comprehension upon the altar of fully expressing yourself. 3 to 5 values maximum. Third, make each value actionable, not abstract. Most importantly, involve your team in defining what these values look like in practice. They are the ones who will live them out every day. Your core values should be the operating system that runs your company, not decoration for your walls. When done right, they create a culture that attracts great people, serves guests better, and builds something bigger than just a coffee shop. Next lesson, we'll talk about building a brand identity that supports the culture that you're creating. So now that we've thought a little bit about what we want to be known for, now comes something that will affect every interaction with your guests, your brand identity. Today, we're talking about building a brand that people recognize, trust, and want to be a part of. Brand identity is not just about making things look pretty, but creating a cohesive visual and emotional experience that tells people who you are before you even say a word. Here's something we learned from a designer who works with Verve Coffee back in the day. When you're first starting out as a brand, You need to put your name on almost everything you do. You can't just have some obscure little logo and expect people to know who you are. Let's take Nike as an example. They've been around forever, so you can just put that little swoosh on anything and everybody knows that that's Nike. But for a new coffee shop such as yours, you haven't earned that recognition yet. The reason you want cohesive visual branding is simple. Whenever somebody sees any visual element from your brand, you want them to immediately recognize it and feel a certain way. It's back to that, what do I want to be known for question. It's this feeling that sticks with guests. One of the biggest mistakes that we made and that we've seen other coffee shop owners make when it comes to branding is they work with a ton of different designers over time without laying a foundation first. And what happens there is you end up with a melting pot of different styles because everybody made something that looked different. Everything was perfect in its given time, but there was no cohesion point or centering point to go off of. Before you create anything visual, you need to establish your brand pillars, your foundation. Then everything else can build from there. When you sit down with a designer, you need to be able to communicate more than just, we want our brand to feel fun but professional. That's what we did. Good designers know the questions to ask you as a business owner. They should give you somewhat of a questionnaire asking things like, what do you want your brand to feel like? Who are your biggest competitors? Who do you definitely don't want your brand to be like? What are 3 words that describe your business? If you have values, communicate those values to your designer. A good designer knows how to take those values and translate them into visual elements. And if this is all a bit paralyzing, just start with inspiration. Find brands you admire and ask yourself, why are you drawn to them? For us, we looked at candle brands with elegant packaging. Even the Mercedes-Benz logo and companies like that felt premium but approachable. We realized we wanted something like taking Apple's branding, for example, and adding fun colors instead of just white, then making the text bolder, and that gave our designers a more clear direction. Maybe create a Pinterest board and collect images that represent how you want your brand to feel. This will give designers something concrete to work from instead of just adjectives. When it comes to choosing the people that build all of these elements, you really have 2 main options. Hire an external design agency or just build an internal team if you have talented people around you. External agencies will give you professional expertise and established processes, but they're obviously expensive and you have less control over the timeline and revisions. Internal teams give you more control and can be more cost-effective, but they definitely require more management from you, and the timeline might be a little bit longer. When it came to rebranding Valor, we looked around at all the talented people on our team, and we chose to build an internal staff with people who had different strengths, an illustrator, someone who understood design trends, and someone great at best practices and formatting. When it comes to structuring your brand identity needs several key components, starting with a logo and icon. You need both a full logo with your name and a simple icon that can stand alone once you've built more recognition. The second would be typography and fonts. You should choose fonts that reflect your personality. Sharp, geometric fonts feel more modern, but cold. Softer fonts with character feel more approachable. And next, onto your color palette. Maybe pick primary and secondary colors that would work well together and mean something for your business model. And then tying it all together, you need a document, which is your brand guidelines. This document shows you how all of your brand elements should be used, the fonts and the colors that you'll use whenever you release different elements. Your brand needs to work in the real world. Think about how customers and guests will actually interact with it. For coffee shops, your brand appears on bags, on cups, signage, merch, social media, and then definitely your physical space. Make sure it looks good at every size and in every format in each application. And consider your business model when making color choices. We use different colored boxes for different coffee flavor profiles. Red for fruity coffees, pink for floral, green for chocolatey, and so on. This helps customers choose based on taste preference rather than just knowing all the details of the origin. And zooming out a little bit, maybe ask yourself, will this brand still feel right in 5 years? Avoid trends that will look dated quickly. We went through multiple iterations before landing on something that felt both current and timeless. Sometimes you need to scrap work that took weeks because it just won't age well. And don't be afraid to say no to designs that aren't quite right, even if they look professional. The question isn't whether it's a good design, it's whether it's right for your brand and what you want to be known for in your community. So once you have your brand identity, your job is to establish recognition. Put your new logo on absolutely everything you do because you want people to start associating it with your business. This might feel repetitive or boring, but you haven't earned the right to do abstract designs yet. You need to introduce your brand to your community and make it familiar first. Brand identity is absolutely an investment. It's not just an expense. Poor branding can hurt your credibility and make it harder to charge the premium prices you need to charge to be a viable specialty coffee shop. But you don't need to spend tens of thousands right away. Start with the essentials, your logo, your basic color palette, your fonts. You can expand from there and refine over time as your business grows. And in closing, your brand should reflect the experience that you actually deliver at your shop. If you're creating a culture that's fun and professional, your branding should support that feeling in every way. The most frustrating thing is when your visual branding doesn't seem to match the best parts of your company. Make sure they work together to tell the same story. Establishing a significant, awesome brand requires intentional decisions about how you want people to feel when they're in your space. While it is key to get your branding right early, don't let perfectionism set in. The biggest milestone to check off at this point is simply just to open the doors. Once this happens, your culture and your brand will organically form, making it easier to dial in your brand in the future. In the next lesson, we'll talk about digital marketing and how to use these brand elements to build an online presence that serves as a launchpad for your new cafe. Okay, so as we get closer and closer to opening, we have to ask a question. How do I get people to know that my cafe exists? Today, we're talking about social media marketing and what actually works for us. First off, if your build-out is nearing the finish line, make sure to set up your Google and your Apple Maps profiles. This process is fairly easy and will go a really long way in getting you found locally. The more photos, reviews, and info about your operation and activity you have on these platforms, the more Google and Apple will emphasize your profile when people search for coffee near me. When we first started, we made an Instagram just because we were supposed to. But here's what we learned. Business is way easier when your business can be recognized, and social media is the easiest way to put your business on display. For coffee shops specifically, social media is very crucial. If you're driving through an area and want to try something new, you're checking Instagram because people are peeping the gram before they decide where to go. Your social media page probably gets more attention than your website even, especially in the early days. That's where your potential guests go to see what you're about and what your space is like. Before you post anything, figure out why are you on social media as a business. When we just had a cart in the early days, it was simple. We wanted people to book our cart for events. When we opened our first cafe and started roasting, we wanted locals to become regulars and people across the country to buy our coffee online. So your content should match the goals that you have. If you're targeting wedding bookings, your content should be to help potential customers picture what it would be like to book you for their next event. If you're building a local cafe, which you are, your content should make people want to visit and become regulars at your cafe. Now, when it comes to actually making the content, there's a spectrum between being incredibly honest and raw versus creating hyper-polished content designed to appeal to everyone. In the beginning for us, we were all about authenticity. We'd pull out our phone anytime, taking almond milk from the store to our cart, jumping around at 6:30 a.m. with loud music playing. We wanted people to feel like they knew us personally. And that worked because we were three guys just trying to make it. And people connecting with us personally was our best shot at success. This type of content served the goal of our Instagram, which was to establish a local brand that attracted new guests to our cafe. And as we've grown, we've moved more towards a polished content style, but we've tried to keep the heart of our company behind it. It can still be silly and fun, but it's much higher production value now. Most food and bev companies' social media accounts don't show you who the owners are, unless they do the occasional meet the barista or meet the owner posts. We've always tried to have about 40% of our content feature one of us talking to the camera. We want people across the country to match a physical human face with our brand. And this has really worked well for us. Guests at our location regularly recognize us from Instagram content and say, "Oh, I know you, you're one of the owners." That makes them feel connected to our company. Here's another core thing that we've learned. You don't need 1 million followers. Do we have 11,000 followers? We have around 19,000 followers, but they're highly engaged. I recognize many of the names of the people who comment regularly, and they tag their friends to try new drinks. This is actual connection between real humans who see each other in real life, not just mood inspiration scrolling. Engagement matters more than follower count. We want people to get a subscription to our coffee on our website, so everything we do is motivated around long-term brand engagement, not individual post performance. Make sure people can immediately tell what you do when they go to your page and what you are selling. In our bio, it says specialty coffee shops and roastery, something like that. People immediately know they can buy our coffee online, in wholesale, or visit one of our locations in person. Help people picture what it would be like to interact with your business on your Instagram. If you are targeting weddings, show the experience. If you're building a local cafe, show the atmosphere in the community. Be consistent with your brand voice across all content, but adapt your tone for different content types. So how much time should you spend on social media? You're a busy person. You're starting a coffee shop. As an owner of a coffee shop, it can be really hard to find time to post on social media. It can just feel like the thing that you know is important but neglect. So segmenting time in your week to focus on it is going to serve you really well. Social media, it's not magic, but it's a tool that can help people discover and connect with your business for sure. Be clear about why you're doing it. Stay consistent with your brand voice. And remember that an authentic engagement beats vanity metrics every single time. Your goal is not to go viral. It's to build genuine connections with people who will become guests and advocates for your business going forward. And here's a bonus when it comes to marketing. Before your doors open, find ways to show up in your local community. Maybe a booth at the local farmer's market, maybe a guest brew bar at your local brunch spot, or maybe a free after-hours coffee tasting. Every small interaction you make in your community adds to the goodwill bank that creates loyalty and lasts longer than just your opening day hype. All right, in the next module, we're going to be talking about developing your menu, hiring your team, and training them up in the way they should go. Welcome to Module 6. We're almost there, where we dive into one of the most critical aspects of building your shop, assembling the team. Remember, in the specialty coffee business, you're not just serving coffee. You're creating experiences, and your team is the heart and the motor of that experience. So we'll start with something that may surprise you. Resumes actually matter more than you think, in our opinion. Now, I'm not saying they're everything, but they're your first impression of a candidate's attention to detail. And here's what we look for before we even get to the interview. First is, how does their email look? If someone emails you from pizzalover97@gmail.com or flowerchild2345, that could be a red flag. Professional communication starts with the professional email address. First name, last name, done. Something like that. Next is the actual quality of the resume. You don't need a designer, but you do need to put in some effort. A clean, well-organized resume shows someone that cares about details. In coffee, details matter. From extraction times to the milk temperature, everything. If they can't invest an hour in their resume, then what does that say about how they'll approach your coffee? Another red flag we have is an applicant leading with compensation questions in their first email. If an applicant must ask, hopefully they frame it professionally by saying something like, "I'm excited about this opportunity and want to respect your time. I'm currently in a position where I need to earn around X per month. Would this role potentially lead to that kind of return?" And here's a crucial mindset shift. You're not hiring good people versus bad people. You're hiring for team fit. This means sometimes you'll pass on genuinely great candidates because they don't complement your current team dynamics. If you have a team of introverts, you might need an extrovert. If everyone's high energy, you might need someone more grounded. And consider your cafe's atmosphere. Are you going for that like Cheers experience where everyone behind the bar feels like a friend? Then the hang factor, which we'll talk about later, that's how someone connects and creates comfort. That becomes crucial in that situation. Before bringing anyone in for an in-person interview, do a phone screening. This is a huge tool for us, and cover the basics. For example, where do they live? Because the commute really matters for that person not burning out long-term on the commute. Their availability and their schedule. Weekend availability is absolutely a non-negotiable for most coffee shops. How reliable is their transportation? Their career goals versus their temporary work expectations. And definitely gauge their passion for coffee. This is key. And all this can be done on a phone call. This will eliminate 50 to 60% of candidates and save everyone time. So once they've passed the phone screening and you're scheduling an interview, let's jump to talk about what will be in the interview. We kind of have two main interview philosophies or approaches. Pressure versus invitation. The pressure approach uses tough questions and formal settings to see how candidates will handle stress. The invitation approach creates a more relaxed environment where people's true personalities can emerge. For coffee shops, I recommend the invitation approach over the pressure. You want to see the real person, not their interview businessy persona. In specialty coffee, you are in the first impressions business. How someone enters your space, shakes your hand, looks you in the eye, and carries themselves in those first moments often will predict how they'll greet your guests for days to come. When you're interviewing, maybe you should think through these 4 lenses. This is a concept that we expounded on from Patrick Lencioni's book, The Ideal Team Player. The first lens is humble or humility. Can they take feedback? Do they lift others up rather than tearing them down? Ego has absolutely no place in a team. The second lens is hunger. Do they care about personally improving themselves? Are they detail-oriented? Will they push themselves to pull better shots tomorrow than they did today? The third is smart, and we're not talking about book smart. We're talking about emotional intelligence. Can they read a room and leave it better than they found it? Can they navigate difficult conversations and connect with diverse guests? The last one is their hang. Are they a good hang? That's the X factor. Do people enjoy being around them? Do you enjoy being around them? Would your guests want to chat with them while they're waiting for their drink? Another thing to consider when you're assessing your candidates is their coffee experience. And here's how we think about it. If someone has coffee experience, it's definitely helpful. If someone just has coffee interest, that is essential. But if they don't have either experience nor interest, then that's an absolute deal breaker, no matter how great of a person they are. Someone who's passionate about coffee but lacks experience will outperform someone with years of coffee shop work but no genuine interest. Passion can't be taught, but technique can. And here's maybe a less expected one. In today's digital world, candidates should know your story before walking through your door. They should hopefully understand your cafe's mission and values. Maybe not your words exactly, but they kind of get the idea. How many locations you have, which in this case, you're just starting your first one. Basic information about your founders or key team members. They should have a general idea of your brand, even if you haven't put much out there at this point. And this isn't ego. It's practicality. Someone who's researched your business demonstrates genuine interest and helps ensure that they're applying for the right reasons. And here's some really practical but very telling, very important stuff when assessing your candidates. The first is timeliness. Being late to an interview is almost always a deal breaker. If someone can't manage their time for something this important with this much advance, how will they handle opening shifts? And maybe consider how they're dressed. There's a sweet spot between overdressed and underdressed when it comes to interviews. Business cash works. Full suits might suggest they don't understand coffee culture. Flip-flops and gym shorts suggest they probably don't understand professionalism. Another thing to consider, great candidates come with thoughtful questions about your company culture, growth opportunities, day-to-day responsibilities, things like this. They're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. And here are some instant red flags to watch out for. So think back all the way to the first module that we did. We talked about your core values and we talked about why you're getting into the coffee business. Your why for your coffee shop, your vision should match your future employees' why and the reason that they're getting into the coffee business. Your core values should be the lens by which you assess candidates that come through your doors. If one of your core values is put empathy into action, like ours is, maybe ask the candidate, can you tell me some examples in your life where you have shown empathy lately? And it's not just a general question like, do you think empathy is good? Or are you hardworking? You want to actually ask them to demonstrate and show you, give you examples of when they've shown your values in action. So remember this, have grace for yourself. Hiring is a skill that improves with practice. This may be your first interview you've ever conducted. Your first few hires might not be perfect, but each interview teaches you more about what works for you and your specific culture and your needs. Also, the more you hire and the more people join your cafe, the more potent your culture becomes. This makes it more clear on deciding whether an applicant is a good fit or not. And at the end of the day, you may have all the tools, but sometimes you just have to go with your gut and say yes or no. Just make a call. Something that's helped us a lot when it comes to making tough decisions on an applicant was doing a 1-month trial. This honestly allows for both parties, you and the candidate, to test the waters without having to undergo a lengthy feedback to firing process. Because when you're striving for excellence, it won't be the ideal job for someone looking for a chill coffee job where they can just work on homework or scroll behind the bar. So getting some reps in the cafe over that first month will clarify everyone's decision pretty quickly. Great teams definitely aren't built overnight. They are carefully curated one person at a time. Take the time to hire right. It's infinitely easier than firing wrong. Make sure every person you hire shares a commitment to excellence and your values. In our next lesson, we'll cover, once you've hired them, how do you train them? And systems you can put around your training that help your new hires succeed from day one. But first, you definitely need the right people in place. Welcome back. In our last lesson, we covered how to hire the right people. So now that you've got them, now we're going to dive into something equally critical, how to train them properly for your launch day. And here's the reality. Most coffee shops throw new hires behind the bar with very minimal training and just kind of hope for the best. That can sound harsh, but when you consider all that we covered about permits, equipment, delays, it makes a little more sense that training your new staff can hit the back burner. A lack of intention on training is a recipe for stressed employees, inconsistent service, and frustrated guests. So we're going to help you build a systematic approach that sets everyone up for success. And before we get into the specifics, let's establish the mindset. Training isn't just about teaching someone to make coffee. It's about acclimating them to your culture, your standards, and your systems. Every interaction during training shapes how your team will approach their roles for months to come. So maybe your training program should accomplish 3 main things. 1, build confidence. A confident employee operates with authority and freedom. That's a bar. Focusing on skills development helps build the how and the why to what you do. Communicating your trust in them to make decisions based on your value is definitely the secret ingredient. Number 2 would be to establish your quality standards from day one through a culture of competency and consistency. Especially in the beginning, you want to do everything in your power to be the voice of consistency when it comes to procedures and recipes. The third would be to create cultural alignment with your mission and your values. Finding out the similarities in your team's goals and the mission and values of your cafe allow your team to be comfortable and self-develop on the job. I'm going to walk you through a tried and true 7-step training system that takes someone from complete beginner, you just hired them, to a certified team member you can absolutely rely on. This system progresses logically from culture to basics to advanced skills. And obviously you'll be hiring people across the entire experience spectrum. So whether it takes longer or shorter per person, you want to get these 7 boxes checked. So first would be the job offer and the onboarding setup. Before their first official day, handle all of the administrative details, just get them out of the way. So you're going to walk them through first the pay structure. Be transparent about your wage progression. For example, we operate on what's called pay bands, meaning you can work your way up the base rate through hitting certain benchmarks, taking classes, the tenure you may have in experience. The second thing you'll walk them through is the position pathway. Map out their progression from support to brewer to front of house roles. We'll explain those roles in just a moment. Give them a clear picture of what certification looks like at each level in each role. Next would be the administrative setup, all that stuff. Get them into your scheduling system, your payroll, and any communication platforms you use. This prevents first day confusion and shows that you're organized and you're on top of it. So after you've checked all that off, it's time for orientation and culture immersion. Start with culture, not coffee. Put that on a t-shirt. You're going to want to spend a lot of quality time on your mission and your values. Don't just read them your mission statement. Explain what it looks like in practice in their role. Share stories of team members or people in your past that have lived out these values with guests. You'll also want to help them understand how their role connects to the overall guest experience as a whole. A support person isn't just cleaning. They're creating the environment that makes great service possible. Additionally, you need to be specific about what excellence looks like in your shop, in your context. Show examples of properly organized stations, perfectly steamed milk, ideal guest interactions. And then you'll want to just kind of walk them through every area that they'll work in. Make sure they know where everything is in the back room. Introduce them to key team members and explain reporting relationships. Who's in charge of who, stuff like that. You'll end day one with them feeling excited and clear about what they are stepping into. It may not feel like much, but the owner spending time with the newest hires sends a clear message of care and investment. So here's where the rubber meets the road. Let's get to the good stuff, and it's coffee knowledge. Keep this session focused and practical. We'll start with the coffee basics like origin, processing, roasting fundamentals, and what extraction means. I wouldn't overwhelm them with complexity, but definitely give them enough knowledge to speak confidently with guests and execute your drinks at the level you need them to. You also want to just cast a vision for your coffee program. What makes your coffee so special? What is your sourcing philosophy? What roaster are you working with? This is what differentiates you from the chain down the street. If you've ever done it before, a cupping or a coffee tasting is a hands-on way to develop their palate. You'll want to focus on basic flavor identification and how to communicate what they taste to your guests. And if they have previous coffee experience, have them demonstrate their knowledge and show the rest of the team. This helps you customize their remaining training to them. So after you've checked all that off, for the next 4 steps in our process, it's time to have an actual visual explanation. I'm going to have Ethan here show you the way we break down responsibilities in our cafe per position behind the bar. Cue the whiteboard.
Game time. Let's just do a position overview. I think it's really helpful in a space to know what's your zone and how to help people own their zone. So I do a really detailed drawing here, true to scale, of the Alpharetta Cafe. As you can see, we got our back bar, our point of sale, our door, boop, boop, where our guests get in line. Oh yeah, it's a busy day. What can we say? And let's just go through the positions in the cafe and a breakdown of what they're primarily responsible for and even secondarily responsible for. I know this could get a little bit dicey, but if you've ever been in the coffee industry before, you know that there's multiple people on at different times of the day. You know, high volume Saturday, there could be up to 5 people behind this bar, even 6. But cut to a Thursday afternoon, maybe there's 2. How are you going to split up those responsibilities? It can be as simple as, you know, take the order, make the drink. But let's see if we can get a little bit more of a seamless operation. So the first position we're going to start with is support. Support, their home base is going to be the back bar. Think of this as, the stage right here, the front bar, and they're back here. When it's busy enough, there's going to be 2 support positions. You're going to have your bar support and your concierge support. We'll get to concierge in a second too. They're going to kind of be on either side of the back bars. Support, in theory, is kind of like a bar back, at a bar. So you're doing dishes. You're doing, we'll get to this concept in a little bit, but the more like primary a position is, the more static they need to be, the more locked in. Their legs shouldn't be moving all that much, honestly. So your support, they want to be the most kind of mobile positions that are going in and out of the cafe. So they're going to be responsible for, running orders. And then they're also going to be the main receivers of delegations from different positions on the front bar. So they might be getting things like kegged drinks and then going to the back to restock. And so once again, the whole concept is they're there to be that catch-all for the people making the drinks and taking the orders. Because if you think about it that way, this is pretty much your only input. And wherever you set up your, expo station for the drinks to get made, that's pretty much your only output. And so the more that you have someone standing in those positions, the more drinks and people can come through and go. So these support positions need to be the most mobile, catching everything and making sure that the cafe is constantly in a state of like homeostasis. It's returning. So if something was drained, it's being replenished. We call that ground zero. So they're kind of just looking after the GZ of the space. That's a really good way to sum it up. Let's go to the next position, which would be brewer. So brewer, I'll write it down here too. Brewer pretty much starts the drinks. And so the way in our cafes, the order will get entered in at concierge. And the way we like to think about it is it starts at the back of the cafe and works its way to the front and it's sent out. So here we'll have matcha, espresso, we have tea on this back wall. Every base of a drink, basically, think brewer, base, they're prepping it. In some of our cafes, especially when we're flowing, maybe they're even adding like the syrup, getting the cup ready, especially if it's for here, and they're getting things ready and sending them down the line, kind of like an assembly line. And the more proficient your brewer is, the more able they're able to get ahead, and we actually added a kitchen display system so they can see orders and they can start getting ahead with extra espresso, getting that matcha before it's even called out. A proficient brewer goes a very long way. Oh, a thing to note here, brewer is kind of your third position. So you have, someone taking the orders, someone making the drinks. When that third person comes on bar, they're going to that brewer position. So in theory, on a lot of days, these two, bar support and concierge supports, they're not even there. So that brewer needs to be doing enough work to get ahead and then go back and kind of take on some of this responsibility here. The dishes, the running, the keg drinks, all that. So based on how many people have during a day, that brewer can take on a lot more work. So let's go to the front. We have this position called concierge. Guest ambassador. All right, there's obviously a little more than just taking the order. That is like the main duty, but the concierge is often the first person that is really getting to conversate and introduce themselves to your cafe. And they're going to be directing this traffic. That is honestly such a hidden, maybe under-communicated concept in a cafe, but it's direction. So many times you walk into a cafe, you're not sure, do I just sit down? Where do I order? What do I do when I order? So the concierge being able to not only guide the person through like our menu offerings, like, hey, what are all these pastries? Hey, what are these retail boxes over there? Oh, you guys actually sell merch? Yeah, it's in this corner. We talked about that already. But saying, okay, hey, you ordered it for here? Okay, here's a number. Why don't you go sit down and we're going to find you? Versus, oh, you got it to go? Here, why don't you wait over here by the bar, hang out with the squad, we'll get you all set up, get you on your way. Oh, you have a dog? Oh, why don't you wait outside? I'm going to put it on your order that you're outside and we're going to run it out to you. So a cognizant, aware concierge goes such a long way, especially in a rush, because nothing is more frustrating when you're wasting time because you just can't find someone who's on their order. So concierge, they're kind of responsible for this side of the cafe, and we'll get to Expo in a second, who's more responsible for the back half of the cafe. Concierge also, if they have a concierge support, they need to be delegating to that concierge support for things like drip, basically non-espresso drinks, drip, kegged drinks, and food. That's huge. For us, concierge is responsible for making sure that food is getting from here into our oven and then on a plate or sent out. So that's kind of concierge in a nutshell. A lot of times in coffee shops, people start here, but as I was just kind of getting to in a little bit, there's a lot of weight on this position. So that's why we like to start with a bar back position, move to starting to make some drinks. And then hopefully by this point, you'll begin to understand the menu a little bit and move into this concierge position where you can not only explain the menu, put in the order accurately, and then get your guest in the right area. All right, we're gonna move to the last position, which is Expo, right here by the steam wand. Expo's got it pretty simple. Just make the drink. Make the drink and walk away. Yeah, so Expo, they have a little screen here as well. They're seeing all the orders come in and they're just in charge of output. You know, making sure, okay, did this croissant get with this plate? All right, can you run this to this number? Okay, hey brewer, I see you got me ahead on shots. Can you go ahead and get started on a iced chai over in your area? They're kind of the octopus. They got a lot of arms, they're doing stuff, but they're also tapping their teammates to help them along. Personally, I had a hard time with this when we were starting because I didn't like to delegate. I said, oh, I don't want to get in people's way. I'll just run over here and box up this food, or, oh, I'll just do some dishes. But the reality is, if you have someone in that position, we need to activate our teams. So the best Expo is standing still and knowing how to use their voice well to activate their team. So, you know, if you guys have ever been to our Alpharetta Cafe, you know, this is not a very big space. And that's why another big point is, you know, owning your zone really well. And so if you're going to go into another space, communicating that well, using good verbiage, and knowing what you're doing and getting in and out. But that's kind of a quick breakdown of the way that we divvy up the responsibilities in the cafe. These are the last 4 boxes you want to be checking. Can my team members operate in this support position? Can they operate in brewer, concierge, and Expo? And that follows getting properly onboarded, getting a solid orientation, and getting some decent coffee education. Ross, I'm gonna send it back to you.
Thanks, Ethan. So after we've checked all those boxes, just some basic things to keep in mind. You want to prioritize progression over speed. Don't rush these certifications. It's better to have someone very competent and confident than fast and sloppy. You also need to remember to weave your values into every training element. This is huge. Show how technical skills can serve your larger mission. Consistency is also everything. Every trainer, and including you on different days, should teach the same methods. Create detailed training guides to ensure this consistency. Feedback loops are also huge. Regular check-ins throughout the training address concerns immediately rather than hoping they'll resolve naturally, early and often. Just lock that in. You also need to be tracking progress at each stage. This helps you identify training gaps and improve your systems as a whole. And undergirding all of this is you kind of need to train yourself first in some ways. You need to master every position behind the bar before teaching others. You can't teach what you don't know. And maybe also consider bringing in a consultant or a wholesale partner by partnering with Valor for initial training setup, or sending key hires to established specialty shops for foundational training. Be transparent that you're all learning together. Create a culture where everyone contributes to improving systems and the standards. You'll want to write down your processes as you develop them. This becomes your training manual for future hires to come. So in closing, let's run through a few things to avoid. You don't want to skip the culture. Jumping straight to the technical stuff without establishing cultural foundation is not the move. Another would be inconsistent standards. Different trainers teaching different methods. Avoid this. Another would be rushing the certification, moving people forward before they're truly ready. You also don't want to neglect the soft skills. Don't focus only on the coffee technique while ignoring the art of customer service. You also want to make sure you're following up, assuming training ends after certification rather than continuing their development. So here's some technical stuff. You need to be clear about financial expectations from day one. The training pay. The training pay should be a fair wage during that training period, even if it's lower than the certified rate. You just need to get ahead of it and communicate to your team. And for the tip distribution, explain your tip pooling system and when they start participating in that pool, which is usually once they're contributing to the direct customer service. And if you're doing this certification approach, make sure there's a clear path to those pay bumps as they get certified for more roles. Remember, training is an investment, not an expense. Every hour you put into proper training saves you countless hours of correction, retraining, and customer recovery later. A well-trained team delivers consistent experiences, which builds that guest loyalty that you want, which drives sustainable revenue. It is that simple. Your training program also becomes a competitive advantage in your hiring. Word can spread quickly in local markets about places that actually invest in their people versus places that just throw bodies at the problems. In our next lesson, we'll cover how to maintain these standards as you grow and as you add locations, if that's something in your future. But first, let's make sure that you have this foundation is solid. The investment you make in training your first team will shape your culture for years to come. So make it count. Yeah. One of the most common questions I get from new coffee shop owners is, when or do I hire a manager? Today, I'm going to give you an answer that may surprise you. Don't hire a manager for your coffee shop, at least not at first. Let me explain why this conventional wisdom is wrong for most single location specialty coffee operations and what you should do instead. There's this pervasive belief that as an entrepreneur opening a coffee shop, you need to have a manager because you're the owner. People think you should be working on the business instead of in the business, especially if you don't have a ton of coffee experience. But here's the reality. Most people start coffee shops because they are passionate about coffee, about people, about cafe culture. They want to be present, leading their team, connecting with guests, and building community. And that hands-on leadership is your highest leverage work, especially in the beginning. So why do people think they need a manager? I think there's three main reasons. The first would be if you don't have a ton of coffee experience, it makes sense that you'd want to put someone in charge who does. But the problem with that is that people come and go, and you may not always want that same person in that role. The second reason would be work-life balance pressure. You're working constantly, you're the person always there, and you think, I need someone else to run this place when I go on vacation or when I want weekends off. The third would be your reward mentality. You have team members who work really hard, and you think, how can I reward this person? I'll promote them to manager. All these intentions are good and understandable, but all can create problems. If you've made it this far in the course, you know by now that coffee is kind of a lower profit business model. We have run the numbers extensively, having 2 cafes of our own, and most coffee shops operate at around 10% profit margin. So if you have loan payments or you need to pay yourself a living wage, that 10% profit gets eaten up very quickly. If you're trying to make a career and support yourself or your family from this business, paying a manager $45 to $50K a year often just doesn't make financial sense in this model. That's money you could be making, and frankly, you probably need and deserve to be making. We learned this the hard way. For years, we scraped by financially while paying management positions we didn't actually need. We just thought we needed them. We were so focused on giving other people career opportunities that we kind of forgot to give ourselves sustainable careers. So I'm going to just lay out the progression of kind of what we went through in the process of being a little bit too top heavy on leadership and payroll, and then slimming down to where we are now. The first phase was that Ethan was the manager of our first location. We had an operations coordinator, kind of like an assistant manager under him. And when we opened our second location, we moved that experienced operations coordinator to head coach of the new location. Hired a new operations coordinator for the first location. So we had head coaches in both, and then operations coordinators under them. Once we were in that place of those 4 roles, Ethan acted as the retail director overseeing everything. Lots of management structure, lots of payroll going to lots of places. The next phase is we found ourselves constantly asking, what do these people actually do with their time? Not because they were bad employees. That was not it at all. It was 100% our fault as leaders, because we had created positions based on their tenure rather than our actual business needs and what we could pay for those roles. As time passed, natural turnover happened in those roles, and we simplified down to just 1 head coach per location. Suddenly, we could give better raises to our baristas because we weren't spending so much on the management salaries, and that really helped our turnover on the barista side. And where we're at now is we delegate specific tasks related to operations to capable team members without creating that role, that position. And this has been a lot more effective. And here's what we discovered. When you create management positions without clear, essential responsibilities, several things can happen. This may be a hot take, but people just kind of fill the time that they're given. If someone has 40 hours to manage, but only 15 hours of actual work to do, they will find a way to fill those 40 hours and not always productively. The next thing that can happen is that you as the owner lose touch with your operation. We became a lot less hands-on in those early phases, thinking that we have managers, they've got it handled, we trust them. But that season was one of the most dysfunctional in our business because we weren't connected enough to what was actually happening on the day-to-day. And to drive home this point further, another thing that can happen is that you can create tenure-based roles, reward tenure instead of building roles around what you actually need. You promote good baristas into positions that they may not actually be suited for, taking them away from what they were good at, which is being a barista, and paying them for something that you didn't really need. So here's what to do instead. Instead of hiring a manager, it's better to identify specific tasks that you need help with and delegate those individually to your top performers. Here's how this works. The first step is to audit your time as the owner. Document what you actually spend time on. Many owners think that they do more administrative work than they actually do. You might spend maybe an hour talking to guests, 30 minutes covering a sick employee, 20 minutes doing dishes. That's all very valuable work. But the other slice of your work, things like weekly inventory, scheduling, basic bookkeeping, new employee training, weekly ordering, you can delegate these things. Break these into specific time-bound responsibilities, and then take those tasks and match them to people. Look at your team's strengths. Who's detail-oriented and good with computers? Who's naturally good at training others? Who's organized and reliable? Start to build out a team around your weaknesses with other people's strengths. So to illustrate all this, here's a real world example. Let's say inventory, which is a task that the manager would usually do, takes about 2.5 hours per week. If you pay someone $22 an hour to do that, which is, their base rate plus tip equivalent, that's $55 per week, or about $8 per day. That's like the cost of 1 oat milk dirty chai, maybe 16 ounces. You can absolutely afford to take that recurring task off your plate without promoting that person to the general manager. The same principle applies to other tasks. Weekly scheduling, maybe like 2 hours a week. That's $44 a week. Training new hires, maybe pay an experienced team member to a little bit extra during those training shifts. Maybe your bookkeeping. That's a few hours monthly, not a full-time role. There's so many benefits to staying lean. When you delegate tasks instead of creating roles, several good things can happen. Instead of promoting a great barista to a management role that they might not want or be good at, you let them stay excellent at customer service while they take on a few admin tasks that can match their other skills. This also helps you maintain control. You're still the primary leader and you're still connected to daily operations. You're still setting the culture and the standards. And then undergirding all of that is better financial sustainability. You're not paying management salaries that you can't afford, which means you can pay yourself a living wage and give better raises to your team. And the whole thing just becomes a lot more flexible. Tasks can be redistributed as people leave or as your needs change without having to restructure the entire position. This also really promotes buy-in in your team. People get additional responsibility and pay without the pressure and politics that can often come with management titles. And this also helps with your own work-life balance. If you need to take a trip, you still need time off, and you have people around that can handle things when you're not there. But this comes from developing multiple capable people, not from one manager. Instead of one manager, maybe develop 3, 4, 5 people who are highly engaged, trained in multiple areas, and invested in the success of your cafe. These people can cover for each other. They can stay late when problems arise. They can come in early when someone calls in sick. And this creates much more of a decentralized leadership. There definitely are some situations, on the other hand, where you genuinely might need management help. If you're thinking of operating and opening multiple locations, you're going to need someone to run the location that you're not at. Another one would be if you're just doing so much volume that it's just way too much to handle, you might truly need someone dedicated to operational oversight. And if you look at your own strengths and your own weaknesses and you just think, man, I just really don't match the role of GM of my own cafe, and you genuinely hate being on the hands-on side of the cafe, your skills are better used elsewhere, then it might make more sense to hire someone to fill in your weaknesses. But being present in your cafe, setting the tone, being the thermostat, connecting with guests, and developing your team on the daily, this is the high leverage work for a coffee shop owner. You're the thermostat for your space. Your presence and leadership directly impact every guest interaction and every team dynamic. Stay lean, stay present, and build systems that support your vision rather than just replace it and hinder it. All of this is built around making a business that allows you to do your best work sustainably. For most single location coffee shop owners, that means being the primary leader, being the GM, while strategically delegating specific tasks to capable team members. All right, guys, buckle in. The last module is upon us. We'll talk about building out your menu, getting some baseline systems to operate your team from, and then planning that soft launch.
One step closer. You've hired your team, you're training them, and you're about to open your doors. But as always, there's one more step, and that will determine whether your first year is going to be smooth sailing or constant chaos. And it's not that cool, but it's helpful. It's foundational systems. Getting your core systems right from day one isn't just about efficiency, it's about survival. The wrong POS system, poor communication tools, or chaotic scheduling can absolutely derail even the best trained teams. So let me walk you through the essential systems every new coffee shop needs based on what we've learned through running multiple locations and making plenty of expensive mistakes along the way. Every coffee shop needs 3 core systems from day one. 1, your point of sale, or POS, how you take orders and process payments. 2, scheduling. How are you going to manage your team's shifts and time? 3, internal comms, how your team stays connected and informed on the day-to-day. If you can get these right, everything else can become a little bit more manageable along the way. Get them wrong, and you might be spending your first year fighting fires instead of building your business. Okay, so let's look at point of sale systems. Bum-ba-dum. This is your revenue engine. Makes it all work. Your POS system is literally how money flows into your business. This isn't where you want to cut corners or just figure it out later. And it can be overwhelming because there are a lot of options out there. So let's tell you why we use Square. No, as of right now, Square is not sponsoring this. We have been using Square across both of our locations, and here's why it's worked for us. One is just that it's honestly seamless. It's easy. Your team can learn it quickly, and when you're hiring baristas, not tech experts, simplicity wins. Another thing is integration. Everything connects. Payments, inventory tracking, employee management, customer data. They have a lot of good options there. And honestly, reliability too. When your POS goes down, you can't make money. Square's uptime is pretty solid, and they have a pretty decent offline mode as well. And cost structure. Yes, very unfortunately, merchant processing fees add up. We honestly pay around $6,000 monthly across both locations in processing fees, but that's the cost of doing business. And Square's rates, they're competitive. Let's talk a little bit more about what we look for in any point of sale system. We want to see mobile capability for busy periods. Is there a certain handheld option we can whip out and take orders throughout the line? Inventory tracking that actually works, employee time tracking, customer data collection, tip pooling functionality, that's huge for us, and even an offline mode when the internet fails. So heed our advice, avoid the temptation. Don't choose your point of sale based solely on processing fees. A system that saves you 0.1% on processing, but takes an extra 30 seconds per transaction, it will end up costing you more in the lost productivity and customer frustration. Okay, let's move on to scheduling. Your labor. It's your biggest expense and your most valuable resource. A good scheduling system is not luxury, it's necessity. And we've made some changes over the years. We used When I Work for years, and we recently switched to 7 shifts. And here's some things that we learned that made us take that switch. When I Work, it is functional, but it's basic. So it's good for getting started, and it's about $700 per year. It worked, but felt like it was built in 2014 and honestly, maybe not updated that much. Now for 7 shifts, it is much more expensive at $700 per year per location, but restaurant-specific features make it worth it for us. 7 shifts does a better job at offering better tip pooling integration, offering smarter scheduling suggestions. It honestly has a much more intuitive interface, and it's a better mobile experience for our team. It also has optional payroll integration for easier consolidation. Okay, here are some essential scheduling features. Mobile access. Your team needs to check schedules on their phones. Another thing we need is shift trading, letting employees swap shifts without involving you. Time off requests, systematic ways to handle your paid time off and your sick days. Also a great thing is labor cost tracking, so you can see how scheduling decisions will affect your budget. Communication tools, sending announcements directly through the app. And here's a pro tip. Whatever system you choose, set it up properly from day one. Train every employee on how to use it. Bad scheduling habits formed early are hard to break. Take that one from me. We did not track clocking in for a really long time, but when it came much more important for tip pool integration, that took a while to adjust, and that's on us. Okay, that was scheduling. Let's look at internal comms, the nervous system of your business. This is where most new coffee shops fail. Without proper communication systems, information can get lost. People can feel disconnected, and problems, they multiply. So we're going to tell you a little bit about why we use Basecamp. It is our team's one-stop shop. And here is why it works for us. It has centralized information. So instead of texting, instead of checking your email, instead of getting a letter in the mail, everything is in one place, even calendar. A huge thing too is project management. So maybe for the more admin side, when you need to roll out a new menu item or plan an event or coordinate maintenance, you can assign tasks, track progress, and keep everyone informed. It also has great document storage for recipes, SOPs, procedures, contact information, schedules. Everything your team needs is accessible 24/7. A thing that we use a lot is the message board, kind of an email replacement. So you can do department-specific discussions. And our cafe teams have their boards, wholesale teams have theirs, and everyone can contribute without inbox chaos. Obviously, this all comes with a cost. It's $119 per month, and that might be expensive for you, but It replaces countless texts, emails, miscommunication that honestly cost way more in the outcome. Let's talk a little bit more about how we use Basecamp. So there are announcements. So all company-wide updates go here, not just scattered across other platforms. Task assignment, instead of hoping someone remembers to do something, it gets assigned and tracked. Shift communication, warehouse team gets special requests through Basecamp, not random texts. Document access, new employees can find everything they need without asking the same questions repeatedly. These supporting systems, they scale with you, and that is such a gift because beyond these core three, there are systems that are worth considering as you grow, like Google Workspace. So stuff like email, calendar, file storage, custom domain, that kind of costs like $75 a month, but it helps you get like professional emails, and that matters to some people. Customers notice the difference between orders at yourcoffeeshop.com versus yourcoffeeshop.owner@gmail.com. Something that's great as an owner of a cafe is Calendly. So for scheduling meetings with, for interviews or for guests, here's the thing. Cheap solutions, they're going to cost you more in the long run. Let's take scheduling for an example. You could technically schedule employees on a free spreadsheet, but that comes with some setbacks. You're going to be spending a lot more time manually updating it. There's going to be confusion when changes aren't communicated. There's not going to be any integration with payroll, and there will be no data on labor costs versus your sales. So that free solution ends up costing you hours of time and operational headaches that a $700 per year scheduling app would theoretically eliminate. So here's the real question. Is this system going to help my business run smoother, or is it going to create more work? If it creates more work, it's not going to be saving you money. All right, let's hit another system that we love, kitchen display systems. If you're serving food or want to eliminate printed tickets for drinks, consider a kitchen display system, a KDS. This will allow you to go paperless. So for all of your orders, you'll send to iPads and you can see that order from where you're working and work on it from there. So there'll be no more printing tickets, which reduces waste and helps tickets not get lost. And on the screen, your orders, they can change color as they age. So for us, it's turning yellow at 3 minutes and turning red at 5. And these apps can often help you track average ticket times to identify bottlenecks. Also, you can use multiple screens that sync up that help you during busy periods. But obviously, there's a reality check to this. Technology breaks. Our Dunwoody location, for example, has 3 tablets, but only 2 can communicate properly. It's still better than the paper tickets, but it's always good to have a backup plan. Square also does have its own KDS system, but they're discontinuing iPad support in June of 2025 and requiring you to use Android tablets. So you need to consider this when making your decision. All right, and we're talking about these systems because we want to see you set up for success on day one. You don't need every system on day one, but you need to prioritize the right ones. Your point of sale, your scheduling, and your communication apps. Add the complex ones as you grow. And what's key here is getting everyone on board. Train everybody. The best system in the world is honestly useless if your team doesn't know how to use it. Build system trainings into your onboarding process and document everything. Create simple guides for how to use each system. When someone calls in sick and you need a different employee to cover their role, they should be able to find the information they need to get it done. And when it comes to these systems, it's good to budget realistically. As we hit on, good systems can cost money. We spend thousands monthly on software, but it allows us to operate efficiently with fewer management layers. And the alternative is hiring more people to manage the chaos. So let's hit on a couple common mistakes that we want to see you avoid when making these decisions. Choosing based on price only. The cheapest option usually costs more in the long run. Please trust us on this one. Another mistake, too many systems. Don't use one app for scheduling, another for communication, another for task management, another for file storage. Try to consolidate as much as you can, especially in the beginning. Another mistake, no training plan. You need to implement a system with proper training, because if you don't, it's just going to create more problems than it solves. And analysis paralysis. Don't spend months searching for the perfect system. Unfortunately, it probably doesn't exist. Just choose good systems that meet your needs and implement them consistently. And watch out for apps that ignore mobile. Look, you have a young team and they live on their phone. If your systems aren't mobile friendly, adoption is going to be poor. So the real power comes when your systems work together. POS data informs scheduling decisions. Scheduling integrates with payroll. Communication tools connect to task management. Customer data flows between sales and marketing systems. This is why established platforms often work better than cobbling together multiple best-in-class solutions that don't talk to each other. Good systems should make things easier. If a system isn't making things easier, it's not the right system. Simple. Your foundational systems are the invisible infrastructure that makes everything else possible. They're not glamorous, they're not customer facing, but they determine whether your team can execute your vision consistently. Invest in good systems early. Train your team properly. Keep them simple and focused on your actual needs, not theoretical features you might use someday. And remember, systems should serve your people, not the other way around. If a system makes your team's job harder, it's the wrong system. So no matter how many features it has, always use this as a metric for success. On our next lesson, we're going to walk through our menu to discuss layout, offerings, and pricing. Let's go. Okay, hello and welcome to the online digital menu of Valor. This may be elementary for some. This may be very learning for others. So welcome, and I'm just gonna take her slow. I'm gonna walk through our menu, how we break it down, how we price it, and what we're thinking along the way. So honestly, coffee shop, it can be hard to build out a menu because it is similar to like a bar where maybe you put stuff on the menu, but someone can just still come up and order a cocktail. And similarly in coffee shops, there's different coffee shops serving different drinks all over the world. And honestly, there's different interpretations of those drinks all over the world as well. So you can see in the traditional section, we do our best to kind of like lay out what we're talking about here. Respect to the people that just got rid of names along the way, but we tried to do a little bit of everything here, and it has gone well over the years. So we start off with, someone walks in and they're like, they're looking at the menu and they're like, I just want coffee. We're like, yes, that is option number one. We call it drip coffee here, but yeah, it's coffee. And I don't know, I don't think it's on this, but separately in all of our cafes, we have another iPad with a screen that can update that is a list of what coffee is going to what item. So that's seasonal drip coffee, ask a PIP crew member what's on. And so for coffee, for to-go cups, we have a 12 ounce and a 16 ounce, and then we'll have the pricing match it there. Then we'll kind of jump into the smallest thing. And then not only will we grow in amount of milk, but we'll sneak in Americano just because it's another, like the top three are mostly a just coffee item, if that makes sense. And then from there, we'll add milk in greater volume to the espresso. And that's kind of how like the traditional menu is broken down. So I could talk for a long time about espresso. In the specialty industry, pretty much every like espresso made is what's considered a doppio or a double shot. And so we kind of just play to that here and say, hey, this is a double shot of our staple blend free throw. So in the specialty industry, a double shot is a single serving that can be a little confusing, but pretty much the base of all of these drinks going forward is going to be a double shot of espresso. We try to be good guys here and be like, water is free. All right. So an Americano, we're just going to match it up with the same price as the espresso. It is in our like nerd section, but this is an area where, you know, you can play around with the different volume of water that you're putting in your Americano, and you're going to get different drinks. So we'll see long black in a little bit, but stay tuned. So you might be thinking, okay, so you're adding milk to espresso. Why is macchiato not on your menu? And to that I say, that is a fair question. There are other entities greater than our own that have brought on different understandings of the concept of macchiato. And so we leave that off the menu, and we leave that for a conversation with our pit crew. So if someone asks for a caramel macchiato, we are not going to default assume that they want an espresso with half an ounce of milk and caramel. But we'll just take on that conversation as, hey, macchiato can honestly mean a lot of different things. Are you thinking like a bigger drink, or, you know, the traditional little bit of steamed milk or a little bit of foam on your espresso? And just take that off the menu. But we'll jump into cortado. And yes, we still have to explain what a cortado is, but there's a lot of people that are pretty into it. So cortado being kind of one of the smaller milk drinks out there, it's going to go here. Then you got cappuccino. We're going up, up, up. Latte after that. Once again, I could camp out on cappuccino for a very long time because there's a lot of different interpretations in the specialty coffee industry. For the most part, we're just going for good micro foam across the board on all of these drinks. I totally understand the people that want to talk about nuance and, you know, should a cappuccino be a little bit thicker of that milk, but in a similar range? Sure, whatever. But for the most part, especially in the beginning, you and your team just want to steam up some good milk that can do epic latte art and taste good. So cappuccino, espresso, 4 ounces of steamed milk. Latte, similar concept, just a lot more milk. And this is going to be your bread and butter. All right. This, you can see how we attached the flavor section right here next to the latte, because you may be a coffee snob and you're excited to serve cortados and espressos, but hey, depending on where you are, I don't know. But, you know, the vast majority of business and your income is going to be in your latte and your iced latte, and then adding flavors to it. You might think, whoa, Valor, you have syrups, you're a sellout. Or you're thinking, whoa, you don't have 25 flavors? It's like, well, we like just having a few flavors, and it's really served us well. We like making our own in-house. We use organic sugar, they're vegan, and honestly, it's not very expensive. It's good value. I feel like when it comes to cost, maybe it's like 10 cents, you know, for us. And so that markup is really helpful for paying the bills. So we have that there, and we hit a little moment here about additions because, you know, like I said about the bar concept, not everybody's just ordering a cappuccino, but you might be, or a latte, but you might be getting a iced caramel cardamom latte with oat milk, or a breve cappuccino. And so hitting on this kind of stuff, and how much does it cost to add a single shot? Do you add a single shot? The answer is yes. We'll split shots and put a single in a drink for people as well. I know some people don't like doing that because things get stale, but honestly, you take that risk, and we're moving in a pretty high volume space, so we're not afraid to do that. So that's kind of like your traditional, maybe some coffee shops, like that's all their menu is. It's just like, hey, we got filter, which would be like coffee. We got espresso, and then you could put some stuff in your espresso, and that's it. But you'll see we expand beyond that. We have draft. So we have a keg fridge. We make cold brew at our roastery. And a lot of cafes make cold brew at their shops, and that's something you can totally do. So cold brew, not much needs to be said here. It's awesome. It's consistent. Nitro cold brew, for us, it's just, it's exactly this description. We're throwing in like a heavier infusion of nitrogen. It's going to give it a dope cascading look, and a thicker mouthfeel, kind of like a Guinness, you know, like a beer. And it's awesome. Another thing that we grew into was kegging our most popular drink, which was an oat milk lavender vanilla latte. You heard, this is such a time saver in the summer because we're making, hundreds of these a day, but having them on tap, we can get people in and out really well with this, and it's super consistent. Okay, so I kind of gave a foreshadowing to the coffee nerd drinks. So we have that long black, so it's like a baby Americano. Some people call it a microcano. I think typically started in Australia, the long black. It's a great drink option. We have a drink similar to it, but it involves no bypass water called the Middle Child. And you know what? You're just going to have to learn about the Middle Child in coffee shop another day. Okay, because this is super cool, and I want to keep moving. But you could read this. We got content out the wazoo about our Middle Childs in our coffee shops, but this is the way that we do by the cup, and it's cool. And MKT, for anyone being like, those are letters, not numbers. Yep, that stands for market, and that correlates to that currently brewing menu that is in our cafes, where we highlight the different coffees that we can put on for the Middle Child in the coffee shop. This drink is epic, the 1-in-1. So, a lot of times you got coffee lovers come and check out your space. They want to try a bunch of stuff, but someone can only drink so much coffee. So a 1-in-1 is a double shot where you can split it into two drinks. One is just a straight up espresso, and the other one is like a small, honestly kind of correlates to a cappuccino ratio. And we learned this from our friends at Cat and Cloud over on the other coast, Santa Cruz. Okay, and then this is a sneaky one. Others. There's just other things that people like to get at a coffee shop that really move. The baby chino, a little milk steamer for the kiddos, hot chocolate, water, chocolate milk, and then some of our like packaged up beverages. And then this is a sleeper right here. If you are starting a coffee shop and you're wondering if you should have matcha on your menu, let's just say it's like, I think our third most popular drink is a matcha. So yeah, it's solid, and it's a great thing. It's a fun, derivative for your space, because there's a lot of tea heads that come in. So hojicha is cool too. It's roasted tea powder. So almost like if matcha and coffee came together for a crazy concept. And then we just list out our teas. We do loose leaf teas that we will bag up into little bags and set people up for to go, and then do like some classier tea infusers for here on trays. We talked about the concept of food a lot, but we didn't explain what we do. So we work with a local baker in our area, and they bring stuff for us every day. And so we're not doing this for other cafes. And so, they said, hey, let's build out a pastry menu. And so this is kind of straight from the preference of us of what we're into. So we'd like to have a rotating vegan muffin on at a time. And I know it's, might be cringe for some, might be key for some, but the vegan and gluten-free stuff, it moves for sure, especially the gluten-free. So having a gluten-free item goes a long way. So we do a chocolate chip banana bread that is honestly delicious either way if you aren't into gluten-free stuff. And then we riff on the croissant because, making laminated dough is such a process. And so a lot of our other pastries are expressions of that. So we have classic, a fruit and cream, veggie and cheese, ham, egg, and cheese. And then we'll cut open a regular croissant and stuff in some blackened chicken salad for a little bit more like a heartier sandwich. And we have another vegan and gluten-free item down here. And this can be hard to maintain, honestly, but in our experience, having a rotating seasonal menu that is dynamic really does bring in guests that want to, try what Valor's cooking up in their season. So we made an electrolyte drink called Valorade. We have a tea drink. I try to riff, when I have something that's non-caffeinated. I like to have a tea drink. I like to have a matcha drink. I like to have a couple coffee drinks as well. So got a matcha colada down here, Spro Loma. It's like a Paloma, but coffee, LOL. And then highlighting one of our seasonal coffees that you could get by the cup. And then in this season, we got a extra expensive seasonal syrup because it is super expensive to make. And then we do a special cold foam. And wow, cold foam. We thought cold foam was going to absolutely go crazy if we put it on our menu, but it's honestly been a nice, tasteful addition that some people really like it, and a lot of people don't get it and don't care, and that's fine. On our QR menu, like if someone scans it waiting in line, we'll highlight all the different coffees that we have. So not gonna like burn through this, but this is just a great asset. And if you have a cafe, having a retail shelf, it goes a long way. It's not like a huge, may not be like the biggest mover, but kind of, we were talking about that when it came to designing your space. You kind of get what you make room for. So if you have a little bit of room for retail, set it up, sell some coffee. And that wraps up the menu. We looked at boxes, we looked at our seasonal menu, looked at our food, teas, other stuff, and our classics. So hope this was helpful. End script. You've been putting in the hours, you're building, you're getting closer and closer to your opening day. But let's recommend and talk about a soft launch. The soft launch is your stress test, your practice round, and your first impression all rolled into one. Get it right, and you set yourself up for sustainable success. Get it wrong, and you'll spend months recovering from bad reviews and operational confusion. All right, let's just talk about what is a soft launch. A soft launch is serving guests before your official grand opening. You're operational, but with limited marketing reach and often restricted hours or menu options. And there's tension here, right? You've got all this way, you're close to opening, you want to make as much money as you can, but it's key that you begin to build out your systems, learn how to serve your guests, build out that flow so that when you have more traffic, you can get started on the right foot. Because this is going to be your stress test. Simply put, you'll never be worse at running your coffee shop than on your opening day. So why would you want that to be your public debut on your grand opening? Let me share our real experience with you. We opened 2 cafes now, our first in Alpharetta in 2019, then Dunwoody in 2023. For Alpharetta, we had a unique situation. We'd been running a cart in the back of a co-working space for a year and a half, doing around 1,000 on weekends and, $600 to $800 on weekdays, all just coffee drinks. So we had this built-in customer base, but I was still nervous because it's one thing to have that built-in base. It's another if you're a brand new shop opening in a community where no one knows you. So our soft launch was a little more simple. We just posted on our Instagram story, 7 to 12 tomorrow, come out. That was it. Very ambiguous, just reaching out to people who are already somewhat, bought into our brand and would maybe extend us more grace because they followed us on Instagram. We ended up doing almost $1,500 in that 5-hour window of just coffee. And that's more than we've ever done in a full day at our cart. So one thing we did really well before opening was being just organic and raw on our Instagram. We would get on, make a story, and talk about whatever we were going through. It was very much like hey, follow along with us as we learn how to open a coffee shop. It's just us, your neighborhood boys trying to follow their dreams. And we didn't have a ton of followers, but they were highly engaged. And this is a huge point in favor of continuing to post on Instagram, even if you have nothing pretty to post about. People love the journey. Just be genuine and raw. And that's so much better than either not posting or being so polished and impersonal in your brand. Now, if you don't have coffee experience, I really think you can benefit from doing like a 3-day soft launch. And here's how I would suggest structuring it. Day 1, immediate circle, just friends and family and people that you know, and just give all the drinks away for free. Pure stress test, learn how to make drinks in a space, learn how to host. This is going to be your new home. Day 2, start to widen that circle. Walk around to different businesses in your area and introduce yourself. Say, hey, we're opening a coffee shop called Valor down the street, and we'd love to have you stop by. Connecting with these people is a gift because they're going to be part of your community and they have customers that they serve too. On day 3, wider circle and just start reaching out to Instagram, emails, people really trying to get some traction in there and seeing how to operate in the flow of a rush. And Honestly, we probably could have done so much more on the marketing side here. We had a newsletter, but it wasn't very active. So if you are already using something like this, just go for it and start reaching out to people. Having a restricted menu does go a long way during a soft launch. So instead of having your complete, full, built-out menu, maybe have 5, 6 things on the menu. People understand it's a soft launch and they just want to support you, so they're more than okay with limited options. So maybe no food or very limited food. We didn't do food at our friends and family night in Dunwoody. Your stress test is just trying to attack your flow of service. So keep it simple. Your team needs to feel like they're the host in your space, and the people coming in are their guests, just like a guest in a home. But if you just hired someone at a coffee shop, it doesn't really feel like home yet. And it doesn't really feel like you're hosting people necessarily, because a really good host knows where everyone and everything is in their home. Having a pre-shift meeting and then a post-shift debrief, it's going to be massive. So try something like the high-low buffalo model, something my family does at dinner every night. Best part of your day, worst part of your day, and buffalo, meaning something crazy, unique, unexpected, or silly. Keeping that open line of communication early and often can really help people not feel isolated when they're learning how to get comfortable in their own space. You need to balance 2 things. 1 is being present on the front lines, setting the tone, and being present in your space. Lead by example for your team, while also learning how to be a host for your guests. You got to be in the operation, but you also have to balance that with being the leader first. We always say the health of the team is the most important thing in our business, because if we don't have a good team, we can't do anything. You need to view yourself as a shepherd in a flock. You have these sheep that are in your care and they need direction and protection. So don't get so caught up in the operation and in the guest that your team feels neglected. Should you take a break before your grand opening? That's what we did. We stayed open quietly for weeks, then did our grand opening party. I would only believe that a few days of being open before your grand opening, it sounds really hard. And if you were going to put out a press release and get tons of people to come check out your coffee shop on a grand opening Saturday, I would err towards, pushing it back a little bit. Be open for a little bit. Learn your rhythms, then show it off to everybody. And really, the grand opening is kind of overrated unless you can really leverage it for reviews. If it's just a big party that's fun, that's great, but it's just fun. So you'll get more sales that day and more people coming there for the first time, but that could be it. Getting people to leave reviews, post about your shop can really create ripple effects for your business. And if you're going to do it, go big or go home. Do you give away everything for free and have $1,500 worth of costs in labor? Maybe, but you could create such a good experience that you have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of future earnings from people who show up and enjoy your brand. When you're building out your budget for opening a coffee shop, typically your marketing line item is 0 because you think, we can skimp on that. But honestly, in retrospect, if we would have done more in that area, we would have been able to make the profit to afford better equipment a whole lot sooner. 95% of people are trying to open a coffee shop on as little dollars as possible, on the skinniest budget, and rightfully so, because it's not a super high return on investment. But some strategic marketing investment during your launch can dramatically accelerate your path to profitability. So, how many people should you hire when opening? For us, we had a team of 6 when we opened our first location, but that was the 3 of us who were very strong baristas, and we had 3 first-time baristas. So with someone coming in completely from 0, having done 0 sales in that area, maybe 6 is still a good number. It's hard to get by with less than 6, to be honest. If you're planning to have at least 2 people behind the bar per day, 7 days a week, that's a lot. It's a lot to cover. And the less people you have on your team, the less margin there is for when someone calls out sick or you need to let go of someone, unfortunately. So you're balancing all of these things together, and that can be tough. So the soft launch isn't just about working out kinks. It's about building confidence in your systems and seeing your team in action before the high pressure moments. Those first few days can honestly dictate a lot and tell the story of your first year. So please take time to do it right. Be authentic in your marketing, share your story, start simple with your menu, focus on your team, and use every interaction to build towards long-term relationships with your guests. Your soft launch is where you get to prove to yourself and your team that this business can work, and everything else builds from that foundation. This is it. Tomorrow could be your opening day. Some things you might want to be thinking about. It's time to unlock that full menu. Have you made every item on your menu before you're open? Has your team made every item on your menu before you opened? This can be a really stressful ride, honestly. I remember being really tired, working some long nights, trying to get ahead of these permits and delays. And you kind of just want to move on from this moment, but I would be really proud of how far you've come and just enjoy it. As crazy as it can be, just remember you are in the hospitality industry. You're here to have fun, and you're here to make sure your guests have fun. Something we talk about a lot at Valor is being a thermostat. So when the pressure's on, you can either be set by the temperature or you can set the temperature in the room. This is going to be your cafe. These people that work in your cafe, they're in it with you. So you guys can set the tone and really make memorable moments. You got this. And if you've stuck with us this long through this course, just want to say thank you. And your first order from Valor, if you choose to work with us, it's on us. We want to see you get started on the right foot. So get out there. You got this.
Okay, gang, you made it to the end of this course. Wow, congratulations. Like I said at the end, I mean, it's such an honor to have a coffee shop, to serve your local community in that way. And if you're interested in working with Valor Coffee for that, you can go to the link in the description below to set something up, or you can go to valor.coffee/wholesale. That's where you can pick some samples, we can book a call, we can talk. And for people that get to the end of this, as a reward, your first cafe order is on us. We talk about money a lot in this, and we know that cash flow can be tight in the beginning. So getting that starting inventory under the belt is always something that we want to do to help make sure that our partners are set up for success. So congrats again, enjoy it, and you got this. Keep going.